Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Truth Warrior. So good to be back. What's the date? We are Thursday, July the 9th, 2026. And today's show, I was inspired by wanting to do a part two to a show that I did back in December. I have posted it out on my social media. I'll put the link in there if you guys don't have it. It was talking about the Fabian Socialist contribution to the communist advance. And it's a book that comes from an Australian writer and historian. And we were going through that book. And I can't believe how many things have happened to vindicate that show and that book and that thesis since I did that show in December. And I'm also pretty ecstatic about the fact that the Fabian Society is getting popular spotlight right now, thanks to Rupert Lowe going on Joe Rogan and bringing it up. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I was shocked to see that this got mainstream, that this got even mainstream alternative, whatever you want to call it. And so let's check out that clip. And then, boy, do I have a part two ready for you today. And don't worry, if you didn't get to fully watch part one, don't go anywhere. You'll be fine. We got lots of things we can get through in this. I think the first part will just give you a little more context so you can check it out afterwards. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me. Let's watch this clip of Rupert Lowe on Joe Rogan, and then we will come back.
But it's been happening for a long time. I think if you look at the Labour Party, again, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Fabian Society.
No.
So the Fabian Society was set up in the 1880s. And it was basically most of the Labour front bench and most of the Labour Party are members of the Fabian Society. So the Fabian Society, George Bernard Shaw was a member of the Fabian Society. You'll have heard of George Bernard Shaw. So it's the most extraordinary organisation. Their emblem is a wolf in sheep's clothing. As if that doesn't tell you what they're doing.
That's their emblem?
So
Can I see what that looks like?
That's their emblem. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Fabian Society?
The Fabian Society.
I need to see that.
You should have a look at that.
I might have to get a T-shirt.
And should I tell you what else they were?
I need a T-shirt.
Should I tell you what else they were? They were eugenicists originally.
Whoa.
Yes.
When?
Well,
how far back?
George Bernard Shaw.
Look at that. That is damn crazy.
Well, everyone should look at the Fabian Society because that runs deep through the veins of Labour.
That is damn crazy.
What do you think of that?
That is damn crazy. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just listening to this Fabian Society coat of arms is really a black wolf that has a sheep's body strapped on top of its back. And it's like covering its body. This is insane. That's crazy. What a complete disdain for anybody else's intelligence. Like, they're not even trying to hide it. They're just like...
They're all members, the front bench are all members of the Fabian Society. So
that coat of arms is...
Keir Starmer is also a member.
I need a T-shirt, Jamie. Please order it.
You want to hold in... you want a Fabian Society T-shirt?
Yeah, just for a goof. I think it'd be hilarious.
Okay. I don't know about the T-shirt. I think it's pretty interesting that either Joe is just kind of acting it up here and playing the part of you, the listener, who is shocked to hear this for the first time, or if he knew about it, or if he is learning about this for the first time. But if you've been watching this show, or you've been following the Unslaved podcast, you know full well this is very old news. I almost feel bad bringing it up so many times throughout my shows about this wolf in sheep's clothing logo of the Fabian Society, and it's sort of an occult symbol showing that there's a hidden layer to it, and there's all of that. And we've been diving into this for quite some time, but I'm glad to see that some of the bigger podcasters, and we got guys like MPs like Rupert Lowe up there talking about it, especially in light of what he was on that show to talk about, which was this rape gang inquiry report and all the things going on in Britain. And of course, for myself, my stake in this is my father's side comes from Liverpool, comes from England. And obviously Britain is the heart of the West, and there's a whole history there. And so it's very relevant, and we all know what's going on in Britain. And a lot of people that I know and been speaking to that come from there are very concerned about what's gone wrong with their government and their media and everything else. And then, of course, I live in Canada, which is of the Commonwealth, City of London, the whole thing. And I did in part one, I'm not going to redo it here today, but in part one, there was a very important part of that episode where I get into the history of Ottawa and the penetration by the Fabian Society into the Ottawa cabinet. So before Klaus Schwab came around penetrating cabinets, these wolves in sheep's clothing were already at it before it was cool. And so it's an incredibly important piece of learning about this history, which is the history that they're not going to really teach to you in school, or if you're just looking at mainstream information. You got to come to podcasts like this. And now, thanks to the massive exposure of that on social media, on X, on the Joe Rogan podcast, this is now going all over the place. And there's a lot of people that are just finding out about this for the first time. So I thought, hey, it'd be a good time to do a part 2 and help to add even more layers for those of you who are not noobs to this. You already got the basics down. There's a lot that I'm going to go through with you today that might be new to you still. And then also for anybody that's new to this area of research, you're more than welcome. I'm going to make sure you're not lost in the weeds. Let me know in the comments if you got any questions or anything like that as we go. But I feel like this is so relevant because you got to learn the history of where all this stuff comes from. Our governments and our society and our media and the economy and all these things didn't just get to the state that they're in, which I think we can all agree is an absolute travesty at this point. It didn't just get there by accident. It didn't just get there by the natural progress of free market systems, as the liars are going to tell you. There's a whole reason why. There are reasons why. There are events that caused these things to happen. And it's important to understand the characters. And as I said in the last show I just did, which I'm very grateful, thanks to all of you who helped me share that out. That's probably one of the biggest episodes I've done in a while. I'm very much grateful for that. I think it's also very relevant to this show today, where I was getting into the battle for the individual and the unique philosophy and the ideas that were born in the West. And what we're going to look at in today's show is the ideology that is directly attacking that. And everybody's thinking, I thought we elected conservative governments in the West, like everybody that thinks they elected a conservative in Ontario with Doug Ford, or Keir Starmer in the UK. You got a conservative in there, did you? Or even Danielle Smith to a certain degree, who's been making some alarming statements as of late, but who knows? Could all just be politics. And people are wondering, well, wasn't the conservative front the ones that were the champions of preserving and conserving liberty, freedom, the individual, free speech, all that? It's true on the surface when you go back to the original camps, but obviously, as we're going to find out, this is wolf in sheep's clothing. This is how this cabal operates. They put people in front of you that talk the part, act the part, dress the part. Turns out, City of London, Fabian stooge, wolves in sheep's clothing. And this keeps happening again and again. And it's been happening in my country of Canada for forever. As far back as you can see, you can find even some of our best politicians that were reigning over a much more well-balanced economy in Canada and a much less divided country. Some of these guys were the ones who sadly opened up the door for the Fabians that weren't going to be so hidden. They weren't going to wear the sheep's clothing. They were just going to come right out and say, here's what we're going to do. This is what we want to make. And the destruction of freedom has been just constant ever since. So to understand the why, you got to know the who, what, and the how. And we need to understand the premise of the ideas and the arguments that were made by these organizations and the people that sponsored them. And then we're going to get into the layers about what really motivates them. So I'm very excited about this. And I hope you're all very cozy. Let me just take a check on the chat. How's it going over on Substack? We've got some people jumping over on Substack. We got Rosie arrived. The penetration is deep. Yes, unfortunately, it is. All right, where else? Oh, over on X. What's up on X, everybody? Good to see you. If you would be so kind as to help share this show out as well. And I don't know what the odds of this might be, but if anybody can get this show or my first show over to someone like Rupert Lowe and just be like, hey, you got to check out this Canadian podcast, I would love to have him on to talk further about this, or at least get this kind of information to them, because I bet you a lot of people are learning the entry level of this, and there's levels to this game. And I've been so fortunate as to interview and research alongside some of the people who literally dedicated a huge portion of their entire lives to studying this particular conspiracy, which is not theoretical at all. It's out there in black and white, as we're going to see. And so I'm so grateful for the teachers that brought me up to speed. And so I'm duty bound to help do that as well for my audience. So without further ado, let's do this. Bring it up here. So we're going to start off. This is going to trigger a lot of Canadians, but that's what the show is all about. We're trying to find the truth. This comes from a great article by my good friend and colleague, Michael Tessarian. It's over on his michaeltessarian.com website, and it is called The Black Nobility. And it is a chapter that a lot of people are not aware of, even those who might be understanding what's happening in the politics today. They forget the history of it. And that's what this article was designed to get into. So I'm going to just read some of this for you. Just bring it all the way up here. So, of course, we're looking at Queen Victoria. Little note here from Michael. He says, Supreme Matriarch of the Black Nobility Network, Queen Victoria, was Queen of Great Britain and Empress of India. She was, in fact, a Saxe-Coburg-Gotha and a descendant of the House of Hanover, a key branch of the Guelph dynasty. Known as a reclusive, half-crazy, half-wit, her favorite statesmen, such as Benjamin Disraeli, who came out later and basically admitted the whole thing, led the British government and empire in her name. Almost every monarch in Europe, great or otherwise, is related to her, including Queen Elizabeth II. Victoria's advisor was the shrewd Baroness Louise Lezen, the power behind the throne, so to speak. Victoria and her lackeys made a colossal fortune from the opium trade, destroying China, India, and other lands in the process. These drug lords now control the Americas, the United States, being nothing more than an estate of the black nobility's world empire. And of course, he's starting to hint at what we've covered before about this City of London project, and the black nobility is a key to understanding that. Now we're going to get into the Vatican connection a little bit here, because, you know, it's a big club, guys. If you think they just penetrated your administrative cabinets, think again. They started by hijacking the culture. And how do you hijack the culture? You get into the churches, you get into the education institutions, and you get into the media. So here it is with, hold on. Why is this getting in my way here? I'm just going to do something real quick. I hate when this happens. Bear with me, guys. We're doing this live. Here, maybe if I minimize it, I can read it. Oh, man, there's something blocking my view. What's going on? Okay, you know what we're going to do then? You know what we're going to do? Restream. You're going to play like this? I'm going to pull up the article. It's actually good that I do. I'll just read it right from there. And then I will post it for you so you have the direct link available. Hold on, let me just find it here. I love when this stuff happens. Okay. So first of all, let me give you guys the direct link to the article. It's very deep. It's basically, these articles are basically like books. I don't know if you've noticed. And they've got all the sauce that you need. Just pass it over to you guys over here. There we go. Okay. Oh, and one more spot I can put it. There we go. Let me just get to that part. Got the Mary Magdalene thing, the Setian Atenists, Prince Harry, Queen Victoria. Okay. So continuing on, we're good on screen here. Okay. So Michael's continuing. He says, earlier I mentioned the papacy, which was for centuries the rival of the black nobility. What we know of the Edessian royals, this is something we've been covering forever on Unslaved, by the way, for people who want that history, headed by its queens, was denied ultimate power by those who followed the brand of Judaism light, concocted by arch-deceiver Josephus Flavius. As Ralph Ellis shows throughout his many astonishing works, Josephus' intrigue led to what we now know as papal Christianity. So they basically hijacked the original Christianity, and then they rebranded it, which is what these communist types tend to do. They saw it that it eclipsed the fourth sect of King Aezus and his Nazarene followers. During his despotic reign, Constantine the Great, he's talking about a historical character that a lot of people don't know about. Constantine the Great made sure this faux Christianity was the one that dominated the world. The monstrous entity, the College of Cardinals, there's your Jesuits, is another enclave of Setnian Atonists, predating or predating on the world. Note the female attire, suggesting the goddess cults of old. All priesthoods are by occult definition female or lunar, in contradiction to royalty. Contradistinction, to royalty, which is male and solar. So basically he's saying you got the male solar, and this is all in occult, so it doesn't always mean male or female figures, but it's just the way they roll out the symbolism. And they do that because of the power of symbolism and the effect that it has on the human mind, right? And so basically the female or lunar cult ends up being the priesthood, and then the male or solar cult ends up being the royals or the aristocracy. So all priesthoods are, he says, therefore, a branch of the female dragon court. Throughout its vile tenure, the Roman papacy espoused pagan teachings disguised as Mariology. In the early 20th century, this fanatical papal branch were finally undermined and infiltrated. Just like the Jesuits, they too are now committed socialists. This means they have been taken over by the black nobility, the descendants of the Edessan monarchy. And then I want to see if my slides will work on this one. Let's try this again. We'll go to the next one here. Yeah, we can do that. However, as time passed, the Vatican was gradually and secretly subverted by the Templar clerics and their agents. So the Templar clerics are what he's identifying as the ideological group, the round table group, if you will, that was behind the Templar Knights and the empire that they were able to build. It was eventually captured by these types of clerical secret societies, and they just so happened to be socialistic in their thinking. And we did a great show on Unslaved with Caleb Lamont on this one. I'll link that one below, getting into the brotherhood and everything else. So by the time of Pope John Paul II, it was exceptionally socialistic. Coincidentally, the royals of the world also began espousing socialistic outlooks and paradigms consistent with the fourth sect's teachings. So he traces it. This is summarizing a lot of research, by the way. He's tracing it back, along with Ralph Ellis, to this fourth sect. These are very ancient occult sects, okay? And there's fourth, fifth, there's all these different branches that sort of branched off, and their lineage continued through history. And the ideas that we hear from Karl Marx and all these Fabian socialists later on, they didn't cook those up themselves. They were already in place, and they come from an occult origin. And I did that whole coverage in my occult conspiracy show, which you can go and check out on Substack right now. So from the 1970s onward, we find that both Crown and Gown changed their spots and joined forces, ideologically and politically. Both have signed on for Fabian socialism, internationalism, and globalism. The New World Order takes birth from a marriage between theocracy and autocracy, two hands serving the same psychotic brain. The Red Papacy and Red Royals meet for the next phase of world control to begin. So he's showing a picture of when Pope John Paul II was meeting with Queen Elizabeth. Originally, the Black Guelphs, the Queen's ancestors, were ardent defenders of the papacy. How then did both the arch-conservative papacy and royals become so liberalized over such a short period of time? In any case, the plan for the subversion of modern royalty was probably the brainchild of King Edward, son of Queen Victoria, and great-grandfather of Queen Elizabeth II. Suggestively, he was a Knight of Malta, surprise, surprise, the Catholic order headquartered in Rome. If you want more on the Knights of Malta, if you're new to this show, go and check out the Cult of the Medics documentary series that I produced during the pandemic. Edward was the first British Protestant royal to meet the Pope. He met with Leo in 1903, and 13 years later, the Tsar of all the Russias was betrayed and assassinated, his realm destroyed by murderous Bolsheviks. Modern democratic parties of the world are simply the purveyors of Marxism light. And that's how it goes. And we have often said that, haven't we, in Canada? We're like, oh, it's the conservatives here are just liberal light. Well, there's a reason why. Now, there you go. This, by the way, the one up here, this is the original Fabian symbol. and it's got the Fabian shield in the background, but this idea of hammering the world into the socialist paradise is a deeply occult symbol, goes well back. So in the late 18th century, after British Masonry was renovated by the black nobility, it became openly anti-conservative and ultra-liberal. Its top members, sworn to the dissemination of Nazarene ideology, subsequently established the notoriously subversive Fabian Society. Fabian symbolism reveals how the political left and right work together to forge the Luciferian New World Order, as directed by black nobility ideologues. Note the pied garb and the Masonic smiths and central motif of the wolf in sheep's clothing. Although these demagogues call themselves socialists, they are nothing for ordinary working men. On the contrary, they work only for the mental enslavement of humanity. So don't fall for all the, we're here for the little guy. That's a crock of shit, as I'm sure everybody's realizing. So he continues here. We got a picture of the Communist Manifesto and the alleged authors. Of course, they were not the original authors. Throughout the 19th century, the black nobility saw to it that fanatical revolutionary cabals and groups set Europe ablaze. Okay, and it was a smattering of different fanatical revolutionary groups. I think these Islamists are also a part of this whole agenda. It was all part of a master plan for world control. Conservative governments were forced to become increasingly liberal to pacify the hordes of disgruntled rebels and social malcontents. After decades of incessant uprising and spread of radical anarchistic movements, the scene was set for the rise of communism. Marx and Engels were funded and directed by the black nobility through their agents in Grand Orient Freemasonry, the Illuminati. The black nobility desired to prevent world revolution, deciding to invent and control their own brand of faux socialism. They envisioned a political system that would unite the world's liberal intellectuals and middle-class malcontents. Realizing that conservative people and nations tend to favor individualism, freedom, and capitalism, the new system espoused humanism, collectivism, internationalism, and communitarianism, not to mention conformity to impossibly irrational ideals. More than a political paradigm, their newfangled democratic socialism was designed to be a veritable secular religion to eventually replace the three Abrahamic religions, the age-old masks the Setian Atonists no longer required. The elite have known for some time that moderns would soon grow tired of orthodox religion. During the 60s, the behavior of the youth culture confirmed this to be absolutely true. The void had to be filled with a new customized dogma made to order. That which brought down Russia in 1917 could be modified to bring down the rest of the world. The new religion of socialism, communism light, is, however, patently materialistic, hedonistic, and nihilistic. Such was the plan, to corral and despiritualize the human race. Because, of course, if you have a despiritualized, demoralized human livestock farm, then no one's going to resist. They're going to beg you for more, which is what's happening. So before we go into this next one, I just want to come back here for a minute and just explain a few things, just to sum up what we were just going through. And there's a lot in those articles, and you'll be like, what? What's this? What's that? This is why you need to be on Unslaver. You need to get caught up with that material to understand the bigger, greater history of infiltration. If I think of Fabian socialism and what that symbolism is telling you and what the ideology is based on, that it reveals the tactics, it reveals how they're able to justify their blatant evil, right? How they're able to justify it. You got to get back to the origin of how, if you're going to destroy a civilization, you have to destroy its foundational ideas. This was something I tried to hammer home in the last show. It's not, everybody thinks that things are just built in the physical world, and that's the end of it. A nation is just the physical land that you're inhabiting. No, it's not. It's based on the ideas that are accepted by the people that make up that nation, right? And then yes, there's the physical properties of the boundaries and the borders and, you know, where the location is, but it's secondary, right? It's if especially in this war we have to understand we have to understand that if we're in a battle of ideas, if we're in an information war, as we've been talking about, what this validates, this research, this thread of research is going to validate for you is that the fifth generation warfare isn't so fifth generation after all. It's actually the first generation warfare. It's the oldest form of warfare. Before we even get to armies mounting on the battlefield or enemies approaching your gates or getting behind your gates, we have to understand that this process of information warfare has been going on for a long time. It's just that we're paying attention to it in the modern age with all the social medias and the technology and even the internet, when that came online. And obviously that's just a better playing field for that tactic of ideological subversion, which is what it is. That's the process. Ideological subversion of an entire culture and civilization. Do we really believe that that was just invented in like 2012 or something? No, it's all the way back. And where would you find the disseminators of the information of the day? Where did everybody get their information from? Before technology, before CBC News, where did people get their information about the world? They got it from priests. They got it from the town crier, who was a representative of the royals. So they got it from two sources, the autocracy and the theocracy. That was the disseminator of everything everybody knows, until we finally had this magical thing happen where we had a little bit of the principles of individualism and free speech and free inquiry and challenge authority and all of that, which was brand spanking new. This is not an ancient practice. Okay. There were people in history, there were moments in history, but not like a totally ironed out financial, political, philosophical framework. That took centuries to get to. Okay. I looked at it as an achievement. It was a human achievement to even achieve the thinking that an individual is even something that exists in the world, right? So just trying to understand that this is a very, very ancient war between two different types of human brains. One, highly collectivized and authoritarian and wanting more of that. And two, the free mind. That's the battle. Okay. And if you're going to get access to the public mind of, say, the Middle Ages or anything pre-electricity and the internet and, even radio or any of that, you're going to have to go to the people who are literate. This is another thing we forget. We have far more literacy today, thanks to the idea of, we want to educate our population and so that they can go become entrepreneurs and work the jobs and, actually be educated. And we can, every individual is special and unique and all that. That, just remember, the vast majority of human history, that wasn't a thing. You went and you got all the information about the world and about who you are and your place in it. You got it from a higher authority who was literate, and you were not literate. So that's the first type of fifth generation warfare, is that you had highly educated priestarchies and highly educated elite royals. And then there's like a filtration system down, right? And then you had the common man who's pushing all the wagons and digging all the ditches and building all the castles and, hammering out all the swords for the military in the blacksmith colonies and all that. And the average Joe like you and me was not able to even read or write. So where did we get information about the world? Well, we looked around with our eyes, we learned a few things about our local geography, and that's it. Or we went and got educated by the priestarchies, who born and bred, trained entire bloodlines of people, who eventually sent all their sons and daughters off to war and all that kind of stuff in the name of whatever they were taught. So if we hear today that World Economic Forum and Fabian Socialists are penetrating our cabinets, meaning they're getting into the institutions and they're changing the culture from within, Trojan horse style, wolf in sheep's clothing style. We're hearing about that. Remember that it's the first cabinets to be penetrated was the human mind. And that project has been researched and studied and taken very seriously by the most powerful people in the world, all over the world, for basically all of history. It is the number one currency. When I read all of these high level, like even some of the names we're going to mention, you read their works, or you get into, like we're learning now about the MK Ultra thing, which again is conspiracy theorists. Cheers. Another admission publicly now. We're hearing about all these mind control experiments and how all that kind of thing went down. And a lot of people are under the impression that that just came into being with the CIA and the intelligence networks and all that. And then they got into the media. Again, where did they get it from? Well, they got it from these elites that already built the CIA before the CIA was a thing. Before America was a thing, there was a CIA. There was an intelligentsia. They were the black nobility would have been the royal elites, but like you think of the Exons, you think of the different chivalric orders and the servants of the empire, right? And the way it got corrupted was by the very easy process of just corrupting the pool of ideas. And so I'm just harping on this because it's like so old, it's new. What they have today is just better technology, and they've got your attention on the screens, on the social medias. They've got your attention now 24/7. Back in the day, everybody be out farming and doing their life and just trying to survive, hack out a life. But you didn't always have everybody's ear. Maybe they'd go to the church, maybe they'd go to the local school, and eventually there was some schools, and then in the schools, you'd start injecting ideology. And if you're thinking about a project of keeping the human mind enslaved and being trained to act and live like a slave, that is if you want a conspiracy rabbit hole, just go with that. The peddlers of that ideology, and look at the long amount of time they've had to perfect this art, this black art of black magic and hypnotism and implanting ideas and violating the will and violating your freedom to forcibly convert you into something. That's why those Masons in that Fabian symbolism are hammering the world. They realize they're up against nature. They're up against human nature, and they're up against the natural forces of nature. So you got to hammer it in. You got to program it in over generations so that they teach their kids, 100th monkey syndrome. The kids centuries later have no idea the premise and the history of where the ideas even came from. And so they just bite down on them because someone somewhere in your life just told you that, and then you believed it. It's so easy to do this. Doesn't mean what you're hearing is true, though. That's where I come in. And I go, hold on. Let's just double check and fact check all the things we're being told about reality, about human consciousness, about psychology, about economics, about the pros and cons of government and what kind of government we should have. And, all these things, just the reason why we're banging our heads against the wall with some of this, where you're getting shot down by all these normies who are just accepting things on face value, is because of the fact that is sort of the default setting of the human race. Accept on face value that which you're given by a higher authority. And you better sit down and know your place, little slave. And we go, yeah, I am. That's it. Right? And so then over time, humanity rebelled against this. This was like I look at it like not just that people put things in motion. There is a natural resistance that comes eventually for the slave to look at the slave master and go, yeah, get the fuck out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. This is wrong, right? So eventually we said, yeah, we should be doing away with slavery. And that's why the history of the West is it's such a roller coaster ride. It's not one way or the other. It's not all good and it's not all evil. It's a mix because of these insidious forces of particular minds of people that have particular ideologies implanted in them, who are the servants of higher forces. Most of them don't even comprehend, and who are moving in to massage and hammer out the world that is being built by who again? All of humanity, like collectively, this is what we want? Or no, a select few that have an ulterior agenda, which is actually anti-humanity, anti-life, anti-thriving, anti-world, anti-nature, right? That's what we're up against. The reason they need to pound the world into place is because they have to use force and coercion and a completely remade human being in order to make what they believe this utopia to work. But it's not a utopia for human beings if it violates natural will, natural law, and sovereignty. It's only a utopia for the elite ruling class that wants to run behind the scenes, right? So just giving you a little taste of how ancient and how big this story is and how important it is to get to it. And there's people even that I guarantee are a part of these Fabian networks and these socialist networks that have no idea what they're dealing with. They just came in on the cues of, oh, liberty, fraternity, yeah, right? But there's a difference between liberty and libertinism. There's a difference between even liberal and Fabian socialist liberal, right? Like, it's totally different terms. And because we're stuck in a prison of words, since we eventually had more literacy in the West, now you have to do another project of, okay, now they can read and write. Now they have access to more information. Now we got to play games with words. Now we got to publish more books filled with propaganda than there are authentic books, like one of the books we're going to go through today that document factual history. We need to drown out those books and those writers by getting a hold of the press, getting a hold of the book publishing companies, getting hold of the university manuals, and massaging in our dogma. So really what you're looking at is a cult that hijacked your scientific institutions, your political houses, your religious institutions. With what? Did they go in and point a gun at the head of the priest and say, adopt our Setian ideology? And no, it was, they massaged it in and they raised their own. They raised their own in their preceptories and in their social houses and in even these elites. They're all puppets to some of these higher thinkers that are higher than them, meaning up the totem pole, not higher in terms of intelligence or like divine insight, but just, higher up in the pecking order. These are what we're seeing is the result of the effect of how this was injected into the culture. And here we are today. It's got new names. It's got some new players than what we're going to look at, but understanding this history, it also dovetails with this history we're learning about in Western countries right now about the difference between Britain and the British people and the Magna Carta and the triumphs of the British system and the American system and the Western system. There's a difference between that and, say, the City of London or the captured Vatican II, right? The captured Masonic institutions, it's basically been capture the flag for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it's not that the original thing in itself is evil and to be thrown out. It's that we got infiltrated by evil. That's the best way that I can explain that. So to get some more context on that, we're going to revisit this great book. Did I still have it up? No, I don't. Okay, yeah, we're going to visit this great book that is talking about the Fabian socialists' march through the institutions, basically. And I can post a link below for you that want to read the whole thing. But let's just start here. We have to understand, I've been talking about the fact that there's these hidden alliances, right? And maybe I can just do it like that. Yeah, we'll just for that. There's these hidden alliances. We're seeing the Red-Green Alliance today, two different forms of totalism hanging out that are probably going to kill each other after the battle, after the revolution, to again get to that greasy pole at the top. But don't forget, these kind of handshakes and these kind of liaisons have been taking place behind the scenes in some of these occult orders and private families and royal institutions. It's been taking place for a while. And so if that's not surprising, would it be surprising that there's a liaison with the Marxist-Leninists and the Fabian socialists? Like, would that surprise anybody? Probably not on this show, but we really do need to hammer this home so we know what we're dealing with. So let's get into this. The liaison with Marxist-Leninists. Behind the facade of respectability, the leading Fabians were quite willing to maintain both a personal and philosophical liaison with their fellow socialists, the Marxist-Leninists. Philosophical liaisons. You know what that means? We share the same notepad. We have the same basic goals. We might differ in some different places, but we're willing to shake hands because we have a philosophical connection, or at least a connection on destroying the same thing. It could also be we see the target we both hate, and we're going to both team up to destroy it, and then we'll suss it out after. There's a lot of that. So although even a number of the Marxists could not bring themselves to accept Lenin's revolutionary program, the Fabians were willing in 1907 to help Lenin and his Bolshevik supporters to meet in London after they had been driven out of Copenhagen, Denmark. It was during the 1907 Bolshevik conference in London that Joseph Fils, a wealthy American soap manufacturer and Fabian socialist, helped the delegates with a substantial loan. So you got to get into some of these financiers and who they're loyal to. Lenin and Trotsky, who had both attended the 1907 Bolshevik conference, repaid Phil's loan through the Soviet government in 1921. So they actually paid the guy back, right? So there's no love lost there. Lenin was directly associated with the Fabians as far back as 1897, when he translated Sidney Webb's History of Trade Unionism. History of Trade. You know what? I got to pull this quote up here. Hold on. We've done it a bunch of times, but if I'm expecting some new listeners on this show, you really do need to hear this quote. This is a quote from the founder of the Fabian Society, Sidney Webb, where he said, and I got this from Michael, he said, to play those millions of minds, to play their minds, to play those millions of minds, to watch them slowly respond to an unseen stimulus, the hidden hand, to guide their aspirations without their knowledge. All this, whether in high capacities or in humble, meaning all of this, whether we're influencing people up at the top of the totem pole or at the bottom. It's a big and endless game of chess of ever extraordinary excitement. So just to give you the mindset of these people, it's like watching rats in a lab in a maze with electric fences and just like, woo, look how they react to the unseen stimulus of the electric charge of the Ash experiment or whatever, right? Like, that's the kind of people we're talking about. So this is who he's talking about. Okay, so let's do this again. Lenin was directly associated with the Fabians as far back as 1897, when Lenin translated Sidney Webb's History of Trade Unionism into Russian. Lenin recommended this book to his fellow Marxists. A close study of Lenin's book, Imperialism, leaves no doubt that the Bolshevik leader drew heavily upon the book by the same name, written by J.A. Hobson, the well-known Fabian leader. A classic example of how the Fabians have always been willing to serve the communists was the report on Soviet Russia given by Sidney and Beatrice Webb after their 1931 visit to the Soviet Union. The warm Soviet welcome in Moscow prompted the Webbs to observe that, quote, "We seem to be a new type of royalty." Yay. But the top Marxist-Leninists knew what they were about. Now, upon their return home, the Webbs issued their famous 2-volume report, Soviet Communism, A New Civilization. Oh, so they want a new civilization now, eh? The one based on individualism and freedom wasn't good enough, huh? This work had far-reaching effects in the English-speaking world because it was presented as a typical unbiased Fabian work. This is their tactic, written by solid, respectable British citizens. All you got to do is make it look respectable, dress it up in the air of academic, philosophizing, and people go, "Oh, that sounds really smart." And we got a guy with a British accent reading it. Sounds even smarter. This is so easy. With their usual wealth of detail, the Webbs created the impression that they had undertaken a massive piece of thorough, honest documentation. But the work was a Fabian communist deception. While many critics of the Webbs report did attempt to expose the false claims made and to show it as pro-communist propaganda, it was not until April 7th, 1952, that a former high official of the Soviet Foreign Office, Igor Boglapov, testifying before the United States Senate Subcommittee on Internal Security, was able to reveal the truth about what had happened. Boglapov said that he had helped prepare the material for Soviet communism in the Soviet Foreign Office. All that the Webbs had to do was to, quote, to remake a little bit of criticizing, but in its general trend, the bulk of the material was prepared for them in the Soviet Foreign Office. Do you know what they're talking about there? They're talking about a very important tactic to know about, that you've got people that will criticize. So the Fabian socialists will criticize the Soviet Union and the communists, but it'll be this fair and balanced critique. This is what the media does. You see it all the time. The fair and balanced critique. So we're doing a critique to get the street cred because they know who the reading audience is, right? Don't forget, your media is always thinking about how you are going to receive the information. It's clearly not about the information itself. It's just, how are they going to digest this? So they do a bit of criticizing, but in the general trend, the bulk of the material in that book was prepared for them by the Soviet Foreign Office itself. Were you expecting this to be all on the up and up? Because I don't know if you know yet who we're dealing with here. The psychological type of person that would want to remake the world in a totalitarian image under the guise of all the lovely things, right? So we just wanted to establish, we're talking Fabian socialism here. We're not talking about something that's in its own little echo chamber. It was highly influenced by the Communist Internationale, in fact, prepared and assisted by them. So we've got the cozy glove shake between the Fabian socialists and the communists. What about the Nazis? This is for the woke righties out there. Here we go. I got to bring this up. It's some small print here. Fascists and Nazis use Fabians. It is important to note that the totalitarian philosophy underlying Keynesian theories, because he did a whole chapter on the Keynesian economics theories, which was basically pretend capitalism where they smuggled socialism in. So underlying the Keynesian theories made them acceptable to both the fascists and the Nazis, because he's arguing that that project of sort of slowly softening up people, this was the FDR thing too with the New Deal. We'll get to that. Whereas the softening up process, we're not going to go all the way. We're not total communists. We're not total fascists. We're just going to kind of like have like a middle ground here with a balanced view. That was the way they did it. Okay. So it is important to note that the totalitarian philosophy underlying Keynesian theories, because that's what it is, made them acceptable to both the fascists and the Nazis. Mussolini observed that, quote, we were the first to assert that the more complicated the forms of civilization, the more restricted the freedom of the individual must become. So just a little request. Could you please stop trying to tell me in the comments about how the right kind of fascism will be suitable to defeat the communists? They're the same person, reading from the same script, sponsored and brought to you by the same round tables, okay? The same high tables. So this is the quote from Mussolini. We were the first to assert that the more complicated the forms of civilization, the more restricted the freedom of the individual must become. You're hearing this from your late night comedians. You're hearing this from your politicians. You're hearing this from your professors in university. You're hearing this from celebrities who have no business talking about any of this shit. I mean, they can talk about it, but they have no business being respected because they don't know what they're talking about, clearly. And this is something that, again, wasn't just born in our time. It goes back to the 1800s here, in the early 1900s. That is what the Fabian socialists also preach. Surprise, surprise. They preach the same thing as the fascists. A fascist supporter, James Strachey Barnes, in Universal Aspects of Fascism, written in 1929, a book which Mussolini personally approved, with his imprimatur, stated, quote, fascism entirely agrees with Mr. Maynard Keynes, despite the latter's prominent position as a liberal. And when he's saying there, meaning like a classical liberal, allegedly. In fact, Mr. Keynes' excellent little book, The End of Laissez-Faire, well, what's a liberal doing writing something like this? Might, so far as it goes, serve as a useful introduction to fascist economies. There is scarcely anything to object to in it, and there is much to applaud. So the fascists like the Fabian socialists also. Fabian and other socialists who are so fond of using the term fascist as a dirty swear word against the anti-communists should have their attention directed to a further statement by Barnes in his book that all this is another quote, all this Keynesian teaching is pure fascist premises. And I just want to highlight here that the author is pointing out that using the word fascist against everybody that's got more of a classical liberal or conservative or just a view of individualism at all, that's what they call the individualist a fascist, when the individualist is nothing but that, is not that, right? But it's a dirty swear word against anti-communists, anti-totalitarians, anti-collectivists. They call you what they are. Don't remember that G. Griffin interview? So the fact that during the fascist regime in Italy, not only Keynes, but other Fabian socialists were translated and studied. Such names as G.D.H. Cole, Sidney and Beatrice Webb, and Bernard Shaw were quoted in fascist economic journals. Not only was the Fabian socialist Keynes accepted in fascist Italy, he was also welcomed in Nazi Germany. Hitler frankly admitted the basic similarities between National Socialism and communism, while the chief speaker at the Fabian International Bureau's conference on March 15, 1942, made the comment that, quote, there is not much difference between the basic economic techniques of socialism and Nazism. And don't forget the Nazis were called the National Socialists. What we're looking at here, my friends, is the prepackaged ideology that I argue comes from the bellies of secret societies and occult orders that go well back into the ancient world. You don't have to take that if you don't want to, but you should do the research on that. It's pretty damning. It's not that it was all these competing ideologies to figure out what worked best for the human race. These were experiments funded by the same people to do a bunch of similar experiments and facing different demographics over different time periods to get the maximum amount of data so they could create the one being used today to unite the whole world under the right mix of Kool-Aid that will blind the masses and keep humanity enslaved. Right? So they learned, what I'm trying to show you here is there was liaisons, there was deals done behind the scenes, there was collusion, there was ideological alignment and agreement amongst these allegedly oppositional groups. They borrow from each other. There's a lot of cross-pollination between the ideas. But what we find in Nazism and Nazi Germany was not born in Nazi Germany. It came from England. It came, and not from the British people. It came from the stronghold of this cabal that has this particular ideological framework built in that goes back to their cults. And the same was done in the Soviet Union. And the same was done. They financed the soft approach in America with FDR, because they knew that Americans would never take they wouldn't take the German model because they're not German. They don't think like Germans. There's a totally different population. They're not going to accept the Russian model. That's the last thing they want to accept in America at that time. So they had to do a soft entry. So the same financiers, this is where you bring in Anthony Sutton's work. He's got the receipts in his books about Wall Street and the rise of Hitler, Wall Street and the rise of the Bolsheviks, Wall Street, right? But I'm going even deeper here than Wall Street. We're talking about the powerful occult high tables that got behind all that. The black nobility and higher than that are trying to reshape and hammer out a different world that works for them, not for you. But they got to sell it like it's for you. They got to sell it like the old established order, even with its blights that could use some renovation, right? Oh, the whole thing needs to go. Well, freedom and you thinking for yourself and speaking your mind and having no, you're a cog in a machine, bro. We're making the Borg here. Like, that's the vibe, right? That's what they wanted. And so they did a bunch of experiments. They financed the whole thing. All these people come from occult orders. They have other allegiances behind the scenes. You even saw that he's hinting at it in in that clip I played from Rupert Lowe when he's like, the front bench, you know who he's talking about? The front bench in Parliament are all Fabian members. They're all members of the Fabian Society. You're Mark Carney? What do you think? If the guy's the former president of Chatham House, governor of the Bank of England, the Rothschild Bank of England, what do you think? This guy lived and operated in the heart of the city of London. Do you think he's a part of the Fabian network? 1,000%. Do you think he comes from this ideology? All you got to do is read his book and listen to what he's saying. 1,000%. Is it any different on the conservative side? No, it's all fake fighting. It's all fake. Oh, we're fighting back. No. Charlatans and cowards is what we've got. It wasn't always so, right? So let's go back here. When was I going to get off on a rant? So there's not much difference between the basic economic techniques of socialism and Nazism. Keynesian theory made such an impact in Nazi Germany that in 1935, Professor Karl Fohl produced a work which was a duplication of Keynes' general theory. Students of the use of communism, Nazism, and fascism cannot help be struck by the fact that all three were revolutionary movements which were directed by individuals with socialist backgrounds. This is what anybody that dives into the material and actually reads all the boring stuff and goes through the names and the dates is going to come back with and go, wait a minute. There's a general theme that just gets expressed slightly differently in all these models. And then you find out they're basically financed and set up by the same people at the top. What do you think is going on? We've been lied to about history. That's what's going on. Students of the use of communism. It is true that Nazis and fascists fought bitterly against communists, but they were in fact battling for the same type of mind. A number of observers have drawn attention to the fact that many German communists became Nazis. Well, after the war, many Nazis found no difficulty in becoming communists. How is that possible? If it's just this totally radical, different thing. And then today you got a bunch of uneducated morons out there that have really big followings in Canada, in America, in Australia, in Europe, that are trying to get young men under the Nazi ideology right now. To say, this is the only way to get rid of the communist infestation that's happened in our countries. Who's putting them up to that? They're either just ideologues and they just read the wrong books, they're totally influenced by it, or we got to look at some money behind that. Right? I've got my suspicions, that's for sure. I can't believe how unapologetic they are about it either. So a number of observers have drawn attention to the fact that many German communists became Nazis, and then after the war, many Nazis found no difficulty at all in becoming communists. The American writer John T. Flynn, in his penetrating examination of the creeping revolution in the USA, The Road Ahead, that's the book, states, quote, "The line between fascism and Fabian socialism is very thin. Fabian socialism is the dream. Fascism is Fabian socialism plus the inevitable dictator." You got to learn from these guys. So continuing here, I think I can bring myself back on this one. Yeah, there you go. Okay. It's just doing that thing again. There we go. Socialist contribution to communist espionage. Further evidence of the close relationship between the Fabians and the communists is provided when a study is made of communist espionage. So this is a brilliant chapter. I love this because he's looking at tactics. You will know them by their tactics. Take note. In his book, From Smoke to Smother in 1948, Mr. Douglas Reed, former foreign correspondent for the London Times and author of a number of books on international affairs, wrote, quote, "I found it," the London School of Economics, "to be well known to communists in Berlin, Vienna, and Prague before the Second World War, and some of these young men did not disguise from me their belief that it could be used by communists who wished to pursue their political activities in England under the respectable mantle of economics and studentship." He's talking about the cloak, right? Wolf in sheep's clothing. A long list could be prepared of communists and pro-communists who studied at the London School of Economics or have been influenced by the Fabian Socialists. So we're getting London School of Economics. This is the location of these Fabian Settian socialists. We're going to throw the Settian in there for a reason. That was their headquarters in London. In Germany, that's your Frankfurt School of Economics. That's your Frankfurt School. And we have multiple shows and references all throughout the Unslaved podcast. You go to unslaved.com, sign up, get into it. All documented about the Frankfurt School, who were the main, that was one of the, like them, and I'd say it's probably Frankfurt School. I'm not sure which came first, the chicken or the egg, the hammer or the sickle. But you got the London School of Economics for Britain, and you got the Frankfurt School in Germany. And those are sort of the ground zeros of how they got into the long march through the institutions. Because from there, you had the main founding fathers of the modern remix of socialist elite totalitarianism that's been given a few different names or whatever, but like Carroll Quigley, he's got his thing on it, right? But we had to look at the ground zero of the ideologues. And there were many thinkers who we've studied who originally signed on for the London School or originally signed on for the Frankfurt School because at the time there was mass appeal for trying to, better human life. And, there was a lot of, and then they found out what the project was really all about. And they left, they walked away like, oh, we don't want to do anything with this. These are humanitarians, right? Originally swayed by the argument of fraternity and we're coming together and love, light. And then they go, oh shit, this isn't love and light at all. We're out of here. And we cover those thinkers who are basically the first whistleblowers of this, right? You can imagine if they're going through when you're doing long march through the institutions, a lot of people that are new to this think that everybody's evil. Everybody just went along with it. No, many resisted. My bookshelf is filled with their writings and their books of the people that resisted from the original attacks. Those are the people to read. Don't be listening to friggin' podcasters like me. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. Listen to the people that actually got the sauce on this and figured out what was going on. That's why my show is just primarily me reading stuff. So a long list could be prepared of the communists and pro-communists who studied at the London School of Economics or have been influenced by the Fabian Socialists. But we will content ourselves with selecting a comparatively small number of important examples to demonstrate the truth of this statement. India's former Minister of Defense, Krishna Menon, has a long pro-communist record and was forced from office in 1962 when the Chinese communist attack took place. He was widely blamed for India's lack of preparedness. Menon was brought to his support for Marxism via a Fabian training, and so was his friend Nehru, who has admitted that he had been living in a world of unreality until the Chinese attack took place in 1962. But Nehru still clings to many of his pro-communist views and pursues a domestic Fabian socialist economic policy. This is back in the 60s. If I brought Michael Tsarian on here to tell you about the history of communism in India, it would probably be a 10-hour podcast just because it's such a huge subject. Continuing on, let's get into Canada now. Okay, where's my Canadian friends at? How you guys doing today? It's a rough day to be. It's a rough time to be Canadian. We're in the most embarrassing news headlines on a regular basis, but don't let that get you down because what's happening is something very necessary. I just want to say this really quick. Something very necessary. When you're going through a detox and a cleanse, there's a lot of very uncomfortable things that have to happen for you to rinse out the toxins. And what we're going through and what every Western country that has been affected by this agenda is going through is the light is being shone on this. This is the good news, okay? And as the light is being shone on it, what are the rats doing? They're scurrying about and they're desperately trying to defend their positions, and it's not going well. So I'm just giving you the background of this so that we know what's coming next, because you got to know who we're dealing with. But here in Canada, don't lose hope, because it has to be this way before, like, we have to mind control multiple generations of Canadians, which is going to be basically impossible at first. But when you start experiencing these things that we're experiencing now, people start asking questions. And that's why my show is getting bigger. And that's why people are reading more of this information and listening to this, because they're wondering, I heard a big bang go off, and I really want to know what caused the bang and how bad the damage was from the bang. And God love you, because keep following that question. We're learning about the bang and where it came from and who did it and why. But I just want to say it had to be this way. So when I'm sitting here talking about Canada, I was born and raised in Canada. And of course, I love my country. I don't like what it's become. I don't like how uneducated everybody is about that, but I definitely have empathy because I know what everybody's up against. We're back again to being the illiterate plebs and serfs in this totalist setup, but it doesn't have to stay that way. You can read and write. You do have access to information. You can still listen to shows like this, at least for a short period of time, until all those bills get ran through and any resistance is deemed illegal. But I see, the thing is, I don't even think we're going to go there. You know how I know? You know how I know all the people that are really going like, oh, we're totally screwed, and I get why, and I sympathize. Do you know why I don't think Canada is going to completely go over the edge? Is because it's coming apart in Britain right now. The fact that someone like Rupert Lowe is on the Joe Rogan Experience and being seen by millions now that were never seen before, and they're getting these reports, and he's on there talking about individualism. If you listen to that podcast, I highly recommend it. I was impressed. I've never in my life heard a politician talk about the Fabian Society and the individualism and basically quote Ayn Rand on a big podcast. I've never seen that happen. So there's something important going down in Britain. And Britain is the future of Canada. They're just ahead. They started it there. Canada's slowly catching up. And then for my US friends, Canada is the future of America if the Patriot response is not effective, which I believe it is, and I believe it will be. But we have to know how this happened to our country and who did it. And no, it wasn't just because we didn't vote for the right guy. It's not that. It's just not that. That's not the problem. The problem is we don't understand the premise of our ideas. We don't understand the history of our own country. We don't understand the history of the royal family that everybody lionizes here. We don't understand the history of the city of London, the banking cartel, and the history of the piratical families and the whole thing with the opium trade and the history. We don't know that. And we don't know the history of these Fabians and the ideology that they are peddling and have been using to sway academics and politicians and world influencers, right? So we're kind of, the average Canadian person is up against quite a monstrosity here, a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy, really. So even if I'm hard on you, because I'm like, wake up, defend yourself, it comes from brotherly love. Just know I have empathy because I know the nature of what we're up against and how sophisticated it is. And there's no average Joe that's just trying to work enough hours to be able to pay the ridiculous amount of taxes we got to pay and pay the high prices for everything. No one's going to put the time in, sadly. And that's why I do this show, is for you, so that you don't have to sit there for the next 40 years reading all this stuff. We can do summaries, get you caught up quickly, because boy, are you going to need it. So here we go for my Canadian friends. The Canadian Royal Commission report on communist espionage in 1946, resulting from the defection from the Russian embassy by Guzenko, he did another bit on him, listed the principal Canadian public servants engaged in espionage activities. You know how we were worried in Canada? Well, not worried. We were made aware of a list of traitors, right? We got our intelligence community like, yeah, we've got some foreign assets working right in Parliament. We got some, and this list of people has never been shown to the public. I want to see that list. I want to know about these foreign infiltrators that have come in and they're trying to set up shop. But I'm infinitely more curious about this, because this is the ground zero. How did these guys get in? The high level players get into our cabinets. Well, it's not hard to understand when you understand the history of the British Empire, right? But if we have guys in our parliaments now who penetrated our cabinets from WEF or whatever, I know the WEF is just like an advisory committee. It's not, but like, those guys who are members of that are also members of these other very political groups that are trying to change policy all over the world and influence it. You've either got those guys in there, they use espionage activities to get in, but we're learning about this going all the way back to the 40s. So this is what we need to know. We didn't just get penetrated during the pandemic, is what I'm trying to say. This happened a long, long time ago. It might even go back to our very origins. And of course, these Canadian public servants were engaging in espionage activities on behalf of Soviet Russia. A big percentage of these were graduates of, wait for it, McGill University, an institution in which the Fabian Socialists had long exercised considerable influence. These are people at the top of your universities in Canada, guys. Why do you think they're churning out so much of this woke and all this kind of stuff? And also the woke right version also. They don't care which one you jump into as long as you jump into one of them. One of the leading espionage agents was Dr. Raymond Boyer, at the time still a member of the McGill University staff. The Royal Commission report drew attention to the fact that Boyer was, quote, a man of very substantial independent means, providing yet one more example of the fallacy of the widely fostered view that communism only attracts the poor and not the wealthy. I'm going to come back to that. There's a huge important point we're going to make. One of the principal figures in the Canadian espionage disclosures was Kathleen Mary Wilshire, who had for some years held a position of confidence in the office of the British High Commissioner in Ottawa. This agent was actually a graduate of the London School of Economics. Remember we were talking about that London School of Economics? So here's the point. Here's the point. This is where you start to sniff it out and figure it out. Okay, so here we go. One of the key principal figures in the Canadian espionage disclosures was Kathleen Mary Wilshire, who had a high position in the office. But if I rewind, so she's like a high position, right? We're not talking about some poor person. The Royal Commission report drew attention to the fact that Boyer himself, Raymond Boyer, was a man of very substantial independent means, meaning he was wealthy as fuck, meaning he was a champagne socialist. That's who these people are. They don't sit at the table you sit at. They don't clean the gutters like you do. They don't have to get up at 5 a.m. to work a 16-hour day. Yet they're there talking to you. And you believe them? You trust these people? You don't trust the capitalist version of that because you've been taught that that's the most evil version of it. And we're going to get to how most of what you think you know about capitalism is also wrong because it's been infiltrated by this. So what you're getting today is not the true free market. You're getting a faux version of it. Just like I'm saying about all the other areas that have been infiltrated. You're getting the faux version. You're getting the faux version of Christianity, the faux version of free market capitalism, the faux version of Western history, the faux version of this and of that. Because these people are faux. These people are fake. They are wolves in sheep's clothing, meaning they're not honest with you. They have an ulterior agenda, and they also have hidden allegiances behind the scenes. That's why you got Keir Starmer and Boris Johnson, who were supposed to be conserving freedom in Britain, but did literally the opposite of that, opened up the gates and let everybody and just destroyed it. There's generations just by their actions alone, let alone the consecutive actions of all the previous agents of this high table that have been in power over there. It's going to take generations to clean up the mess of just the last two guys I've mentioned in Britain. Rupert Lowe is the moderate option, guys. Okay. So this is what is important, is that we're not dealing with people like everybody that thinks, oh, these guys are Che Guevara, Mao Zedong. They come from the people. They're the people. They love us. No, they don't. They're elites who like socialism. Why would an elite want socialism? Why? The guys that made billions and billions off the opium trade and all this shit. Why do they want to, what do they up for socialism for? They've got more money than God. What do they have any business being involved? You think they're just humanitarians? Maybe some of them, But the smart ones realized, wow, the solution we're baking up here is actually going to blow the whole world up. It's going to be horrible. Like, and they jumped off ship. What about the guys that didn't? Are they really that dumb? Because to me, anybody that's peddling this totalism or collectivism or so whatever it is, any variant of that Kool-Aid, you've got to be a special kind of stupid to be going along with that. Or if we're talking about these cats, the champagne socialists, they know bloody well that it's a scam. They have alters to the people that wrote the script for this. To them, it's an opportunistic thing. And why would it be so effective? It's because collectivism turns the people into one brain. And what's easier to rule over? I'll come back for this. What's easier for a small group of people to rule over many people? What's easier? Turn them into a Borg where they all think the same, act the same, dress the same, operate the same? Turn them into cult members, basically? Or have a bunch of free-thinking individuals that are exploring the nature of reality and human consciousness? Which one is a threat to totalism? So if you then do that equation and you go, right, that would be really weird that they wouldn't be using some form of, they wouldn't be trying to smuggle in some kind of totalism under the guise of utopia. It's one leash, like dogs. We walk our dogs, we put them on choker collars with leashes to train them not to run around and bite all the kids. Leash for many necks. That's what it is. It's, you're enslaved. And they don't just capture your money. They capture your mind. That's ground zero. That's why we did premise of ideas in the last show. That's why it's absolutely crucial. The study of ideas, where they come from, the effect they have on reality when you implement them. The most important study you could get into. And then you get into the people that are advocates for certain ideas that have, it's never been proven to work. Even if you have the humanitarians in there, they're just their goody little Care Bear hearts. We're just trying to do good. We think the brute of history, the Genghis Khans and the obvious tyrants are the worst. And they're horrible. They're evil. Don't get me wrong. It's the goody two-shoes that have done the most damage, bar none, in this world. The goody two-shoes, trying to get in there and fix what isn't broken or what the wrong fix to a valid problem, right? This is why it's so complicated. So what do you think's easier? They're not in this because they believe in it, is what I'm trying to say. The Socialist International and the top people at the high table of that board, they do not believe in Marxism. They know socialism doesn't work. It's the reason it's used. They know the results of socialism will be devastating for your economy. They know the results of this multiculturalism, whatever that word is, which can be separated from having multiracial society. That's a totally different thing. Having competing antithetical ideas all hanging out at the same party will produce what? Division, war, chaos, right? So these people, when I say there's no innocent explanation for what's going on, it's because of this. It's because of this knowledge of how these people operate. If you have champagne socialists who are, they come from elite royal families and secret fraternities, right? And sororities, if they are advocating for it, the funny thing about it is they're not going to advocate for it for themselves. Haven't we been pointing this out with just some of your local mayors and politicians and like Gavin Newsom and all these guys who are like, they seem to be advocating for socialism for everybody else but themselves, because these are the guys like Barack Obama and all these two-facers who are sitting there going, yeah, we should really, or Trudeau coming out recently saying, we really got to we're focused on redistributing the wealth. You know, the rich people have too much and we should just redistribute it. Mr. How much money did he spend on his little private jet when he was the prime minister for just his food? And we see Mark Carney carrying on the braised beef and luxury butter tradition that Trudeau started. How much of his millions that he pulled out of his investments while being a prime minister? How do these guys even become millionaires? How does Nancy Pelosi become a millionaire as a public servant? The fact that these guys are making careers out of being a politician tells you what's wrong. And then they're making money. They're stealing money from you. And then they're investing it and making all this money off the market. Thank you, capitalism. But they'll never say it. But they want socialism for you. Right? You trust these people? Most of the people that I've spoken to that woken up from this propaganda, always tell me, they're like, it was the leaders that woke me up of these movements, because it's one law for thee and not for me, which is the opposite of the equity argument that they like to use, which means they're using the equity argument illegitimately. They're using it as a cover story for another agenda, which, what is it? It's to take all your money. That's all socialism is. It's just different ways of putting ideas together and minds together to figure out how to loot, how to steal, how to gain power, right? And that's why they're also as ruthless with each other as they are with you. And that's why people don't understand why the fascists and the communists were at it. And then the average person with no education about this goes, oh, there must have been a good guy, bad guy there. It's like, no, bro. Like, it's just two rival gangs competing over the same piece of meat that's out on the ground. That's all that is. So we gotta upgrade the vision or the view of this. Did I do the whole thing here? Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, okay, we got that one. Let's move on. I think there's some more for the Canadians here. Yeah, okay. So in his appreciation of the Communist Manifesto for the Labour Party, issued in 1948 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Marx's basic document, meaning the occult document that he was put out as the public face for, Fabian Harold Lasky, go look at Harold Lasky, asked the revealing question, quote, this is what Harold Lasky wanted to know, who, remembering that these policies of high taxation and centralization of credit were the demands of the manifesto, can doubt our common inspiration. So he's basically, again, talking about the Fabian socialists and the commies being buddies. The Fabians openly proclaimed early in their history that the use of high taxation was one of their chief means of reaching the socialist state. So what was that? High taxation was one of the chief means of reaching. So we weren't just paying back a loan we took to fight some of these world wars. Because remember, that's how they sold the people who used to live in a free market. They said, well, you got to do the high taxes, but just for a short period of time till we can pay back what we lost in the war. And people went, okay, sounds reasonable. You can jack the taxes for a little bit. Lo and behold, here we are still paying those same taxes, plus taxes on taxes on taxes on taxes. And it's just never ending. Which means they sold you down the river is what they did, and everybody bought it. And then you find out, oh, they're all secret handshaking with the communists in Soviet Russia, the mass murdering psychopaths, genocidal maniacs. Lovely. They also stated that, quote, to the socialist, the best of governments is that which spends most. You know how we're all critiquing here, look at how much these guys are spending. They just gave how many more billions to Ukraine and all these foreign conflicts and all these foreign things and all these other government programs that are just doing nothing for anybody. They're just wasting taxpayer money. Yeah, it's not a mistake. It's not an error. It's not misguided. It's part of the program. That's the goal. That's how you level the playing field, the levelers. That's how you do it. You de-incentivize the productive. You will own nothing and you will be happy. That's a Fabian concept that the World Economic Forum is parroting. They didn't invent that. Continuing on, he says, although both the Fabian and the Marxist socialists direct much of their propaganda at the evils of monopoly, this is but another example of throwing up a smokescreen to mask the truth that the progressive concentration of economic power is welcomed. According to the Marxists, the development of monopoly capitalism is an essential part of that historical inevitability, which they claim leads to communism. So you're going to see the bait and switch here. And I hope it lands. Okay. Every critique, I said this in the last show, every critique you have against the free markets from these, I don't care what variant of the socialist you're going to get that's going to do this. Every critique is a self-critique. This is the silver bullet, my friends. This is the one that ends all the debates because they're critiquing themselves. Every time they get all up in arms, you got AOC and Bernie Sanders and all of their acolytes coming up and going, all the celebrities, we got to redistribute the wealth and the poor and blah, 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 and the climate. And capitalism is to blame, and the Western is to blame, and Western civilization was a mistake, and la, 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 la. All we just got to do is the right kind of communism. It just hasn't been tried yet, right? And then they point out the monopolies and the big mega corporations. Look at that, Halliburton and yes. See, people like me know what's going on with the corporations, the Thanatos corporations, monopoly capitalism. That's what Carol Quigley, professor at Georgetown University, the mentor of Bill Clinton, he said in his book, Tragedy and Hope, he called it super capitalism. The Rockefeller capitalism, the Rothschild capitalism, the black nobility capitalism, that, guess what, wasn't capitalism. That's why you got to read Ayn Rand's book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, because she totally, utterly decimates this fact that this guy's going to go through with you right now, just in a brief summary. But if you want the whole debunking, get that book. Memorize it. You're going to need it if you want freedom. Monopoly capitalism is an essential part of the socialist communist advance. Can we understand this? That's why a World Economic Forum that looks like a capitalist, we're getting all the entrepreneurs and the big corporation, the Bill Gateses of the world together with Bono and Klaus Schwab and King Charles and all these people. It looks capitalistic. They wear suits and ties. It looks like that. But it is, dun, 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 Fabian socialism in action. What we're seeing with this monopoly capitalism is the evidence of the hijacking of our institutions. And then the Marxists on the bottom come out and go, look at all the evils of the West. Look at all the evils of the free market. Look at all the evils of capitalism. And then they build feminism around it, and they build the climate thing around it, and they build the race thing around it, and they build the whole thing around it. And then they go, look, and guilt, 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 shame, shame, shame. That's all they know how to do. When it's built in envy, right? And they don't tell you the real idea of freedom and free markets that was originally designed by the founders. So this is a massive wake-up call for people out there. You got a bad taste in your mouth about capitalism. I hate to break it to you. The bad taste you have is basically just a branding switch for the party you are voting for right now, thinking that that party, the left, the leftists, which are that's Fabian socialism, is going to take down the Fabian socialism that was leaked in as the straw man so that they could take it over and convert everybody into this. So I love it when I hear communists and socialists going after capitalism, because I just take notes of all their critiques and go, well, you're not going to like it, my friend. You're critiquing your own ideology, because it was what the elements of capitalism and the Western system and the market that you are critiquing are the elements that your team smuggled in and then relabeled as being capitalism and free market. What are you going to do with that? You'll do nothing is what you'll do. So far from the free enterprise, private ownership system inevitably developing into monopoly, a number of surveys have shown that high taxation and centralized credit policies have been the main causes of economic concentration. It is the Keynesian socialist financial and economic policies which are aiding the communists by making it appear that this concentration is inevitable and inherent in the free enterprise economic system. That's their claim. It's inevitable. They're like, we predicted it. Well, it helps to predict things when you've rigged the game. It's like when you rig a football game or you rig a boxing match, and then you say, well, it was inevitable that the guy that I rigged the fight for won. Yeah, because you rigged the fight. Then it's, of course, suddenly you look like you have a crystal ball and you're a super deeply intellectual economist now. You find out none of them know shit about the economy. Let alone the fact that they don't know they're critiquing their own economy, their own model. It's wolf in sheep's clothing. Don't forget, the symbolism will be their downfall. They actually showed you what they are and what they're doing, and then they did it, and apparently that's still not enough for some people. I don't know what's going on. There is no doubt that Keynes set out to deliberately foster economic concentration and to undermine the middle class, the bourgeoisie. Joseph Schumpeter, the neo-Marxist from Harvard University, summarized the Keynesian view in the following passage in his book, Capitalism, Socialism, and Democracy, which he wrote in 1950. Quote, "The perfectly bureaucratized giant industrial unit not only ousts the small or medium-sized firm and expropriates its owners, but in the end, it also ousts the entrepreneur and expropriates the bourgeoisie as a class, which in the process stands to lose not only its income, but also what is infinitely more important, its function." A lot of fancy. You get that? You hear what he's saying? So what he's saying with the perfectly bureaucratized giant industrial unit, you know what that is? That's your fake free market capitalist system. That's what that is. They wheeled in the Trojan horse and built the straw man so they could continue attacking their own model while injecting their own model the entire time, all the way up to the finish line. That was the goal. And if you hear what I'm saying here and what this author is pointing out, which is all he's doing is showing you their own words, okay? Don't worry about theories and academics and all. Go to the horse's mouth. Look around you at the evidence. The proof is in the pudding, right? Simple, basic axioms. When you see the super capitalists, these mega international corporations and big mega central banks that are running fiat currencies, and now they want digital IDs and the whole kit and caboodle, we call them the technocrats now. That's just another name for the same cabals, the same psychology. He's basically praising the fact that the current warped crony capitalist system serves the interest. Then he's going into the Keynesian, because he goes into the whole Keynesian thing, right? That serves the function of the socialists. So that means it wasn't designed by free market individualist capitalists. It was captured. That's what that means. Got to really drive that point home. In an article, and we'll just add more to it if that's not enough. In an article in the London Sunday Press in 1920, H.G. Wells, you know H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds? Go read his book, The Open Conspiracy. It's called The Open Conspiracy. I don't like conspiracy theorists. Well, if it's good enough for the big cats that hijacked your economies, it's good enough for me, bruh. H.G. Wells, 1920, the following lucid comment concerning the same point made by Chase says this, quote, listen to this, big business, another name for crony super capitalism, which is just Fabian socialism in disguise. Big business is by no means antipathetic to communism, meaning it's not against communism. The larger big business grows, the more it approximates to collectivism. It is the upper road of the few instead of the lower road of the masses to collectivism. You see what he's saying there? These are valuable gems, guys. Take some notes, take a screenshot, write it down. Basically, big business does not in any way contradict communism. We know about the handshake between the Fabians and the communists. We know H.G. Wells was a Fabian socialist, right? Happily, admittedly, he wrote a whole book about it. The larger that big business grows, the big mega corporations, the more it approximates to collectivism. Isn't that what happened? The big business, that's why it's always been Doesn't matter who you put in, you're getting the same shit sandwich. Maybe a little better over here, but not really that improved. Not what it could be, not the potential of freedom. The potential of freedom has not been reached. Not yet. It's constantly been harassed by these types of collectivists infiltrating it and trying to pull it down. This is the crabs in the bucket pulling down the successful. It is the upper road. So we're talking tiers now. Those champagne socialists that are up in the elite classes and they're part of all these secret societies and stuff. That is who that system is for. You get just straight up collectivism on the lower rung. That's what you get, where you'll own nothing and be happy. The question everybody asked about that own nothing and be happy statement, Fabian Socialist doctrine, they started asking, well, yeah, if you do the math on that statement, you'll own nothing and be happy. That means, well, somebody's got to own things. Somebody's got to own the means of production. So it's the people that are going to be taking control of all the means of production of planet Earth that are going to be the ones telling us we're going to own nothing and be happy, which means they own everything and we own nothing, which means, what does that mean again? So Fabian socialist financial and economic policies produce the economic centralization. That is the key. The ring of power. The ring of power. Which the communists then claim proves that Marxism and Leninism has scientifically demonstrated that capitalism develops inevitably through monopoly capitalism to socialism. They rigged the game, guys. Rigged the game. Is that surprising? The well-known American Fabian and admirer of Keynes, Stuart Chase, in his book, A New Deal, a slogan which President Roosevelt borrowed for his administration, wrote, and which AOC went with, we got the Green New Deal now. You can tell who her predecessors are. The quote from this book says, Mr. Keynes, following Karl Marx, used the great cooperation as an institution increasingly ripe for state control or outright ownership. He finds many parallels with the state trusts of Soviet Russia. We're back to that again, huh? Oh, Musing to Myself says, I wrote an article about this. Oh, very cool. I'll check that out. That's on X. Thanks. I'll jump on that after the show. Appreciate it. We need more people writing articles about this, so go for it. Now we'll wrap up with the reality of socialism here. I'm just wrapping up my slides, and then we can chat about this stuff in the comments. The reality of socialism. The underlying philosophy of all socialist policies, whether advanced by the Marxist-Leninists, the Fabians, or any other brand of socialists, is collectivist, reactionary, and opposed to the freedom of the individual. So you just need this in your quiver, all right? If they are opposed to the freedom of the individual, and they start humming and hawing and, well, you know, sometime, and they start doing that shit when you start talking about the freedom of the individual, instead of being like, I stand firmly for the freedom of the individual. If you hear anything but that, start pulling out some H.G. Wells and some of these Fabian socialists, start reading and see, you'll start realizing you're dealing with an ideologue, okay? It must be centralized power. It must be collectivist in nature. We've already defined collectivism for anybody that's new to this many times on this show. Start getting into that. It has a specific definition. It's not just, hey, collectivist sounds like we're all coming together to build something amazing. Why would you be against that? That's not collectivism. Collectivism is very specifically a political financial model, right? So it's collectivist, it's reactionary, it's about central power, and it is directly opposed to the freedom of the individual. Have I not just explained your political ruling class? I don't care what Western country you live in. And it's because now we know the ideological framework and the premise that they come from, the school they were raised in and groomed from and sponsored by. Now you know why. It's not a mystery anymore. All central planners fear individual freedom, and here's why they fear it. Because no one can predict how the individual is going to use his freedom. And they don't like that because they don't want these rival competitors on the board that are going to get in their way. because they're looters and pirates and thieves, right? These are Thanatos self-murdered people that get into this, that want this. They want equality because they want to get rid of competition for themselves. They want to forcibly change the natural order because of the way they feel about themselves in the natural order. It all goes back to the individual psychology, no matter how collectivist they say they are. It's a lie. It's an illusion. So they fear other individuals that are going to go, wait a minute, you guys are just trying to steal all our shit and take all the power. And they're like, no, we're here for the poor and needy. Oh my God, you guys are so judgmental. You're here for yourselves, you wolves. Central planning requires that planners have effective control of all aspects of human activity. That's why they want the surveillance state. That's why they want your digital ID. They want you tagged and marked. They want track and trace. They want your neighbors reporting on. They want suspicion amongst the masses. They want divide and conquer, because that's the only environment these people can succeed in. They can't win in a fair system. They can't win in a free system because they themselves are not free. That's why. You got to know who you're up against. The exercising of freedom by the individual is essentially a creative and spiritual activity. It's a creative and spiritual activity to be an individual. That is the highest form of spirituality you're ever going to find. Yet people, the reason I know all the religious houses got infiltrated is because the message stopped being about that. They didn't read these guys like Lev Shestov and some of these other thinkers we're learning about on the Unslaved podcast right now that were theologians, that were Christian, that were within the clergy before it went red, and were critiquing the fact that they were pushing religion as a collectivistic activity, and they hated it. But nobody reads those Christians, you know? But if you want a good Christian to read on this, go get some C.S. Lewis. Go read Screw Tape Letters and all that. I'm so glad Michael's been bringing that up lately in these shows and saying it's so true. There's different levels, right? And a lot of them smelled the problem that was happening within their own midst. I just brought that religious element in because they're using collectivism in those areas to bring in this overarching ideology, which is why a lot of your churches went woke, by the way, because the foundation was cut out way back at the Vatican II and the John Paul II and the high table coming in, infiltrating the Catholic Church, which used to be totally on a different playing field with this. And we've documented that in great detail on the Unslaved podcast. I'm going to keep bringing it up because it's so crucial. So this is their goal: central planning, collectivism. The exercising of freedom by the individual is essentially a creative and spiritual activity. What if your priests were teaching you that? If your priests were teaching you that, we wouldn't be infiltrated right now. If your school teachers were teaching your children this, we wouldn't have all this Marxist nonsense running amok and people actually believing in it again. Exercising of freedom of the individual, meaning your ability to think, your capacity to think about thinking. It's an individual activity. To listen to the show and make a decision, what you like, what you don't like, what you agree with, what you don't agree with. You're an individualist, bud. If you're already your individual brain is hammering this out right now in your head. It's not some collective, even though there's other people watching with you. They are all individually, maybe coming to different conclusions in different places. And then anything that's going to challenge you in this show is going to prompt one of two things: head back in the sand. I don't want to learn about this. It's too icky. It comes with some bad feelings. Or it's complicated and difficult to understand, so therefore I'm going to walk away with it. That could be the decision made. Or it's going to propel you and encourage you to exercise your creative and spiritual potential in response, which can only be done by the individual mind. Only. Self-development depends not only on freedom of choice, and here's what they hate the most. Do you want to know what they hate the most? Do you want to know what this is all about when you boil it all down? Self-development depends not only on freedom of choice, and you need an environment which is going to allow you to exercise freedom of choice, right? But the acceptance of personal responsibility for the choices made, which I don't know if you've noticed, but if you ever watch the debates and the street debates and some of these debates, Charlie Kirk used to do these debates with these lefties in universities right before they shot him, because that's their only response. They only believe in violence. Tear it down, beat it down, break it down, kill all the dissenters, collectivists, right? Trying to encourage people to go and think for themselves and activate their spiritual individual mind so that they can reason for a change instead of just blindly following and being blinded by the light. It's the acceptance of personal responsibility for the choices that are made, which is what we're all dealing with. And you will know when you watch these debates that personal responsibility doesn't exist because of the sheer amount of contradictions that come out of the mouths of these people. Everybody's pointing it out. There's memes about it. There's really hilarious videos made about this. Shout out to the meme lords that have done some good work to point this out. Is that they're so riddled with contradictions. And then when you point them out, they don't accept responsibility for contradicting themselves. Right there, you're already getting a snapshot of that type of psychology. The psychology of the person that buys into this program is that self-hate. I mean, just look at these people with just look. I'm just going to say that. Just look at the way they abuse their bodies. Make it ugly on purpose. Self-hate. Hatred of the natural world. No communion with the natural world. No spiritual covenant with the natural world. That's why it has to be an highly exaggerated pretend caring for the environment and not an actual caring for the environment. It's all fake because the person that's stuck in that mindset is exhibiting a fake delusionary version of themselves because they don't love themselves. So they're against themselves. They're against the natural world. What does that produce? A denial of reality, an evasion of reality. And the reason why we're denying reality and invading reality and why that's so popular is because reality brings consequences. There is an objective world that has consequences built into its laws, which means personal responsibility for choices made, not even just the actions. The actions are a result of what? Everybody looks on the surface, they see the actions, they forget the actions are prompted by something. There's a stage before. It's the choices made. The choices are made by what? The individual minds that are making the choices and then carrying out actions in the world. Premise of ideas. Here we are once again. So that's the reality of socialism. Do you want to hear the counter argument? Let's wrap on the counter argument. Got this at the Ayn Rand lexicon. She's definitely the one for the job here. Here's what she says on personal responsibility and obligation, because this is what the socialists, the Fabian socialists, will argue, and you'll hear it. It's huge in British culture, by the way, huge. It's huge in Canadian culture. You have an obligation. This is why you're going to hear it. This is why when you were listening to it was a little while back, there was a liberal convention. If I remember the liberal convention, there was the NDP convention, which was, holy geez, bring some stiff whiskey for that. The liberal convention looked a little more polished and they had some more academics and some brainiacs up there. And one of our professors or whoever that guy was out there literally arguing for the fact that if a Canadian citizen that went through the education system here, who pays through the nose for their education system, by the way, graduates and then moves to the US, they should be fined hundreds of thousands of dollars for doing that. Because why? What was the argument that that guy gave? Well, Canada produced that talent. Canada produced that knowledge. Canada was the one that raised you and built you. Collectivism. You're not your own individual mind. You're not your own individual person making choices and taking responsibilities for your choices and then showing up every day to the school, paying the money to the school, doing the lessons, taking those lessons, and then trying to build something with it and build a life. No, it's not that. You're a product of the people. That's what these smarmy, totalist control freaks want your children to believe. And they want policy put in government to punish successful individuals who dare go and actually say, I would like to actually make some money in my life and have a family and be able to afford a house. And I can't find that in Canada under the Carney or the Liberal or whatever, the WEF regime, the Fabian Socialist regime over here. So I'm going to go somewhere where I can actually use this education for something that's going to benefit my life. And they say, how dare you? Not only are you taxed, not only are the prices high for education because of the fake economy we built and called it capitalism, you're owned by the people of Canada. We own you. This is what cults do. This is what cults do. We own you. You don't own yourself. That's what we're up against, guys. Not just an economic model. It's, do you own yourself? Do you own your mind? Do you own the consequences, whether good or bad, of your decisions? Or are you owned by an elite high table or the group with torch-bearing, the torch-bearing mob around you that's so fickle and easily programmed and led by the nose that it's got to be marveled at by the aliens flying by going, oh my God, they're still doing that shit? It's that level of, in my opinion, a backwards operational model. So anyways, keep getting off on these segues. Here's the counter. Life or death is man's only fundamental alternative. Talking premise, fundamental. Let's look at reality. Let's look at the reality of our lives. You can choose Eros or Thanatos. You can choose life or death. And she's talking very practically, because don't forget, she saw what went down in the Soviet Union. So she's probably got some PTSD and is like, look, here, let's just boil it all down. All the fake costumes and the pretend it goes away the minute everybody's in gulags. Okay. Life or death is man's only fundamental alternative. To live is his basic act of choice. If he chooses to live, a rational ethics will tell him what principles of action are required to implement his choice. If he does not choose to live, nature will take its course. Now, when she's saying choosing to live, she's calling on the heroism. She's calling on life is not just you sitting there breathing and existing. Life is lived. It's an action. Life is the purpose of life. That was the philosophy, right? And you have to choose to live. Living is also a process of actualizing yourself, creating yourself, building from yourself. And then when you build in skills and you build in the self-realization and you build in, you build yourself, right? You are living because you are moving, you are taking action, you are making decisions, you are accepting responsibility for your decisions. This is life, right? And you must choose to do that. Or you can choose death, which is to go and absorb yourself in the Borg, pretend that this thing about personal responsibility was just made up by some evil capitalists in the West, the white man made it up, and you get to lie to yourself and choose death. Whether we're talking metaphorically there or even literally, because that's how these things always tend to go. Reality confronts man with a great many musts. This is what nobody wants. They always think it's the system that's the problem that causes all the ills of mankind, when it's no, it's just life. Life and death. In order to live, there's musts. One of the musts, you better be cleaning your teeth. You better be eating food. You better get a certain amount of hydration. You better be exercising and moving your body. You better be thinking good thoughts and building your mind so that you're not depressed and become suicidal and then go get made and get the government to take you out, right? There's musts. And if you don't do the must, if you don't look both ways before crossing the street, that's a must for survival. If you don't do that, there's a consequence. And here's the sales pitch of these Fabian socialists. Guys, we're going to eliminate all the consequences. And the consequences of reality and nature, of which you're a part, that's a lie that was made up by free market, freedom-loving individualists. Did you know that? That's literally their argument. That's why they hate Ayn Rand, because she just saw through them. You guys are full of shit, right? Reality confronts man with a great many musts, but all of them are conditional. The formula of realistic necessity is you must if. And the if stands for man's choice. If you want to achieve a certain goal, you must eat. If you want to survive, you must work. If you want to eat, you must think. If you want to work, you must look at reality. If you want to think, if you want to know what to do, if you want to know what goals to choose, if you want to know how to achieve them. There's ifs, there's musts. In order to make the choices required to achieve his goals, a man needs constant automatized awareness of the principle which the anti-concept duty has all but obliterated in his mind. Duty to what? How many good men have died for duty only to find out, or not find out, maybe they find out in the afterlife, I don't know, that it was the duty prescribed to you by someone that just wanted you to serve them and sacrifice yourself for them only. Not to do some great duty for humanity, not to do some great duty for your women and children, not to do some great duty for your country, but to do some great duty for the city of fucking London. Time to get another duty. In order to make the choices required to achieve his goals, a man needs the constant automatized awareness of the principle which the anti-concept duty has all but obliterated in his mind, the principle of causality. Specifically, the Aristotelian final causation, which in fact applies only to a conscious being. I love that she put that in there, because they'll keep making comparisons with animals. That's all they do. Oh, well, this animal species actually it doesn't do that. Like, that's how they do it, right? And you go, right, but man is the only rational being. So there are certain conditions only applicable to man. Man builds complex societies and civilizations that eventually put probes on Mars, okay? So we're not talking about ants right now. Ants work totally differently from fucking humans, okay? In fact, it only applies to a conscious being, see? The process by which an end determines the means, i.e. the process of choosing a goal and taking the actions necessary to achieve it. In a rational ethics, it is causality, not duty, that serves as the guiding principle in considering, evaluating, and choosing one's actions, particularly those necessary to achieve a long-range goal. See, remember, she looked at humans realistically, not idealistically. The Fabian socialists have this ideal, this like delusional ideal of a man that isn't even an ideal when you boil it all down. It just looks like it is, but it's not. It's not based in reality. Causality. That's the basis. You are a self-interested being. Why does that hurt your brain? That was her argument. Why is this such a big problem for you to understand? You are a self-interested being. The guys running, the czars running Soviet Union were self-interested. The guys running the Nazi experiment were self-interested. The guys that financed FDR were self-interested. And they're the ones peddling the shit that self-interest is somehow not a thing, and we're not going to. And that's why what she was calling for, and other similar philosophers were calling for, was the rational self-interest, to understand that you have this, this is why you're self-interested, because you have a choice of life or death every day. If you are self-interested, then you will be motivated to choosing life. If you are not self-interested and you have self-hate, then you are motivated to choose death or destruction, or the destruction of yourself and your freedom. You see how it goes? It gets to the heart of the matter. So following this principle, a man does not act without knowing the purpose of his action. In choosing a goal, he considers the means required to achieve it. He weighs the value of the goal against the difficulties of the means and against the full hierarchical context of his other values and goals. He's talking about the process of reason. He does not demand the impossible of himself, and he does not decide too easily which things are impossible. Because of man's experience living in the natural world, pre-electricity, right up to the modern day, you realize there's consequences. You need to set goals. You need to make decisions that help you facilitate your goals. And then in the process of making those decisions, you might make a wrong decision that will get you further away from your goals. So then you got to get back on track and make you know what I mean? Like, this is life. Shouldn't need to be said, but clearly it still does. He doesn't demand the impossible of himself, and he does not decide too easily which things are impossible. He never drops the context of the knowledge available to him and never evades reality because he knows there's a consequence to doing that. Another great quote she says that I love is, you can evade the consequences of reality, but you cannot evade. No, you can evade. What did she say? Oh, yeah. You can evade reality, but you can't evade the consequences of evading reality. There it is. That's the quote. It's brilliant. It's a KO. He never drops the context of the knowledge available to him and never evades reality, realizing fully that his goal will not be granted to him by any power other than his own action. Just look at history. And should he evade, it is not some Kantian authority that he would be creating or that he would be cheating, but himself. And she's just referencing her gripe with Kant, and we've done many shows talking about that. It's another tangent. A disciple of causation is profoundly dedicated to his values, knowing that he is able to achieve them. He is incapable of desiring contradictions, of relying on a somehow, of rebelling against reality. Somehow we'll pay for it all. The budget will just balance itself. Justin Trudeau, right? Evading reality. He's like an evading reality Guinness Book of World Record holder, okay? Learn from the best. He's incapable of desiring contradictions. This is a big one. Contradictions. It doesn't mean you're not going to get caught with contradiction. If I get caught with a contradiction, I want to know about it. And there's also got to be a differentiation with what's a contradiction versus what's a variation. That's another thing we got to iron out. There's things that people perceive as contradictions when really what you're trying to do is offer variations. But then there's the contradictions that we see that I was telling you when you're going on those street interviews and you're talking to some of these people that have this Fabian philosophy baked into their skulls. They're walking contradictions, and you can see it everywhere. And there's zero effort or apology for breaking that rule. And they rely on, well, somehow we'll build the utopia, somehow, some way. It turns out you need a violent revolution and mass depopulation, but hey, somehow we'll figure it out. The utopia is coming. When the real utopia would be human beings operating heroically, taking responsibility for their actions, and operating on a very intelligent level to solve problems and promote freedom. That would be more of a utopia than the fake one that they're selling everybody. So let's go on. One more here. So accepting no mystic duties or chosen obligations, mystic, just think cult leader when she says mystic, okay? This is why I did all the cult stuff, because they give you all these duties and we're doing it for the tribe and for the team. You got all these sacrifices you better be making. And there's obligations that, they're going to be kind of uncomfortable. You're going to have to watch this Buddhist monk, raping some 13-year-old girls. But, don't worry about that. This is just, it's an obligation for you to keep the good name intact of the great leader, right? We don't want to be talking. So you have an obligation. And all these little things, they get people to do evil things for a higher cause. This is how they work. And they use obligations and duties because you're a slave in their mind, right? So the slave has obligations, the slave has duties. And again, we're not talking about the duty that would come from free will of people that were doing a duty for their country or for their ideal or for their family. That's different. The duty of defending your home, the duty. But what about the duty to yourself? That's always suspiciously absent from the writings of these Fabians and these collectivists. There's no discussion of the duty towards yourself. What do they call it? The duty unto yourself. Not the duty you have to fulfill for the czar, for the king, for the ruler, right? This is the difference, and it's all the difference in the world. The obligations to keep one's promises is of the most important elements in proper human relationships. So she's granting there is a place for it, right? But here's the proper context. The element that leads to mutual confidence and makes cooperation possible among men. That's your obligation. But the acceptance of full responsibility for one's own choices and actions and their consequences is such a demanding moral discipline that many men seek to escape it by surrendering to what they believe is the easy, automatic, unthinking safety of a morality of duty. They learn better often when it is too late. So this is a huge one. I can speak from a male perspective that men seek duty. I read the warrior tradition. It's loaded with writings and poems about duty to the, because you got to justify why you're about to go and either kill people or be killed, so you need a justification. Sometimes there's valid ones and sometimes not, right? But the unheroic, what we would call the beta, the unheroic man would prefer the easy life, the automatic life, the automated life. Why is the world getting more automated? Is it because we're at the height of technology, or is it that technology, which is pretty impressive, but is being used to automate your life so that you don't live an authentic life, so that it's more conducive to a slave mentality? Now we're getting in there with a magnifying glass, right? Which is it? So the unheroic, they want the easy life, they want the automatic life, they want unthinking safety, which is why the slogan of, hey, we'll give you some more safety and security if you just give us all your freedom and your property and your wealth. That's why it's so appealing, because people want unthinking safety, and they want a morality of duty, because they want a morality because they know man is geared towards immorality, and they know man is geared towards caring for his fellows. So all we're seeing here is just the manipulative tactics of some very cunning people, of how they basically hacked the human psyche and figured out what the weak spots are, and then built a philosophy based on those weak spots, not to help improve humanity, but to enslave humanity. But you learn that lesson when it's too late. That's the historical precedent. Hopefully the West right now can learn this now, right away, and start turning this car around, right? But we'll see. The disciple of causation faces life without inexplicable chains, unchosen burdens. How many unchosen burdens do you have? How many unchosen burdens do you have? There's burdens that you accept, and they are chosen, and they are worthy, and they shape you and mold you and make you stronger. There's those burdens. There's those crosses that you can pick up. But then there's the ones that people just drop on your back and then walk away and go, well, thanks for helping me out. And then they just kind of give you their monkey, right? The world is full of them. What happens if those types of people gain political power? What do you think they're going to build? So the disciple of causation, the heroic man, faces life without inexplicable chains, unchosen burdens, impossible demands. We can change the weather if we just pay more taxes and give up our freedom. And demands or supernatural threats. This is where I come up with the priesthoods, who've utterly destroyed the true divine traditions of religion. His metaphysical attitude and guiding moral principle can be best summed up by an old Spanish proverb. God said, take what you want, but pay for it. But to know one's own desires, their meaning and their cost requires the highest human virtue, which is rationality. So I think that does it for the slides. But giving you a counter argument. And there's other counter arguments too that go even deeper, and other little segues that are brilliant that have been already argued that we can study to come up against this Fabian thing, which it's funny. We talk about these and we give them names and labels, and people are always like, well, who's doing it? Is it the Nazis? Is it the commies? Is it the Fabians? Is it the Jews? Is it the Catholic priests? Is it the this? Is it the that? Is it men? Is it mainly women? It's human beings with traumatized psyches that are afraid of reality and are seeking to evade reality. That's who's doing it. They just wear different costumes and are a part of a lot of very, very interesting occult orders and political parties and all kinds of things. But don't get distracted by that. That's just all the decoration. What I like about the reason I bring Rand up, the reason I bring up this book that we did, the reason I bring up certain thinkers is there's certain people that are just really good at pointing out the obvious and seeing through all that. That's why it's wolf in sheep's clothing. The sheep's clothing is what throws you off. People think evil is just going to walk up and go, hi, I'm evil and I'm going to do some evil shit. You want to come? Get in, loser. We're doing some evil shit. That's not what evil does. It comes up and goes, I'm a sheep. I'm just like you. I just want equality. I love freedom. I put it all over. I got a t-shirt that says freedom on. I got all these free. And you go, yeah. So what's your overarching political philosophy? What is your view of humanity? What is your view of the individual? What is your view of nature? What is your view of this world? And you start asking those questions, you're going to see right away the costume is going to come off and the wolf will show themselves. They are predators. They are leeches. They are crabs in the bucket. They are control freaks. And it's because they're terrified of reality. They're terrified of freedom. They're terrified and they hate. This is the other big one that Rand gave us. Thank God. She identified it at the base of it all. When you get through all the economic and political bullshit arguments, you get down to the real motivating factor, which is envy, which is the hatred of the good and the heroic for being good and heroic. That's what it boils down to. That's why the entire philosophy is called leveling the playing field. Who wants to level the playing field? Do you think the heroic, motivated, creative, spiritually empowered individual is going to be creating equity arguments in their philosophy? No, they know that those things actually destroy the human mind, and they de-incentivize people, and they wreck civilizations, and they create nothing but poverty and misery for all because they violate the natural law. That's what they're not advocating for their individualism and their freedom because they're just a bunch of narcissistic assholes. That's what the Fabians want you to believe. They dress up their adversaries, which are the heroic, are the creative types, are the productive types, the hard workers, the people with the dreams, the people that actually put their hands to work in the real world and try to make the real world a better place. And yes, they profit, and damn well they should. They should get equal measure of their contribution. And it ends up that those inventions benefit everybody else. And the only incentive you need is not some highfalutin morality that was dreamt up by George Bernard Shaw and Sidney Webb, of all fucking people, and the Knights of Malta, you the Club of Rome and the WEF, and keep going, right? It's not, you don't need that. You just need to understand the nature of human beings and stop hating on it, because then you're hating yourself. And what if a lot about human nature you've also been lied about? And what if human nature hasn't even fully been seen and experienced to its glory because we've been stuck in this polluted fish tank that keeps getting chemicals dumped in, and the water's dirty and muggy and everybody's sick. So it's pretty easy for them to critique all of this when we're living in the filth they created, these totalitarians. So I'm just not here for it. I'm not here for these arguments. I'm not here for any form of collectivism to come and fight and win the day. I'm done with it. When you find out that all these collectivistic forms were literally built and designed by the same type of people, and the results are nothing but destructive, there's a better way to be collectivistic, meaning community-oriented, family-oriented, having a positive culture, everything in balance. Everything in balance. Right? So what's the way forward? Well, improving the education in the people, in people, giving people access to the information, which is why I chose this as the way that I was going to fight back against this. It doesn't require a big violent revolution the way the communists would do it. It doesn't require that. They would love for you to get into that. That's not the reaction right now. The reaction is using your mind, which is your katana blade and is more powerful than all the muskets and all the king's men you can rally to do something that's just going to get shut down. That's not the way. The way is to use your mind. The way is to be that change. The way is to, despite the world being the crabs in the bucket environment that it is, still be that crab that climbs out of the bucket. That's the solution. And the more people that do that, the more that inspires people to do that as well. Like the 4-minute mile and all the examples of when everybody thought it was impossible, the Wright brothers, whatever, they thought it was impossible until it was done. You know? Being heroic, building yourself, educating yourself, loving yourself, forming a relationship with nature, forming a communion with the divine that is you one-to-one with that, whatever that is for you. Whatever that is for you. Watch out for these snake priests. Watch out for these charlatans and liars. And you will know them by their arguments. You will know them by how they diagnose the problems in the world and what their solutions are for that. You will know them right away now. You've seen it. You've read, you've watched these shows. You've got the manual. The playbook is known. And may it be known more. Let's get into some of your comments. Musing to myself, very interesting, back on X. So getting into this article that this person wrote, I'm going to have to read it, saying it covers the UK and how using Gramscian, Blair, and Labour, Gramscian, like the Gramsci ideology, Blair and Labour were able to capture the Whitehall and the culture. It's all cited and documented. Oh, I believe you. I can't wait to read this article. Thanks for sharing it. Yeah, Tony Blair. There's your Fabian socialist Luciferian friggin' poster child, man. That guy's probably like a vampire. Have you ever seen that guy? Holy shit. What's going on with him? But yeah, it's all cited and documented. You'll also see some of the same tactics Labour employed being used by the Democratic Party. Yep. And it's the same here in Canada, my friend. Same thing. The fact that they're all doing the same song and dance at the same time in all these different countries simultaneously, and you think there's nothing going on. Come on. We've got the names, we've got the playbook, we've got the receipts, we've got it all. Everything's known. Well, there's still some classified shit. I want some more specifics, but hey, we're doing pretty good in the public domain. Yeah, an evil man. Oh, I get hijibis just thinking about him. And that's why primary psychopaths and sociopaths love collectivism. Because to them, they're wolves. They're like, oh, all the sheep are going to love this shit. Hey, I'm one of you. I'm one of you. I'm one of you. Gavin Newsom, I'm one of you. Mark Carney, hey, I'm just a normal Canadian that loves hockey. Here's me sitting with Mike Myers, who's just another normal Canadian who lives in America and made a lot of money with Hollywood. And we're elbows up now, right? It's all fake. It's all fake. What's going on Rumble? Yeah, the frog in 9/11 says the caste system. Yeah, I don't know what part of the show you said that, but yeah, the caste system. My God, we could do a whole thing on that. We are eternal souls having a human experience. I'm cool with that. Slaves no more. We have the keys to open the cage. I love the positivity in the comments, guys. Keep it up. I love it. I'm usually expecting a bunch of like very doom and gloomy. I love when people are in here and like, yes, slaves no more. To the walls, to the battlements. We will preserve freedom. Eric Q. Freeman says, end times for them, the beginnings for us. Yep. End time for the lie. We're moving into an era of truth, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, kicking and screaming. Svetlana Sabenkov says all citizens of the common poverty countries are owned subjects. Yep. Oh, yeah. MN Jersey J say, how are there only 34 people watching this live? Oh, thank you. That's a compliment. I know. I'm always just sort of, I'm in the back drawer. Let me check on my X, actually. I always find this funny. Let's see where I'm at. Here, I'll show you. I'm just going to, this is just some fun stuff here. Oh, wait a minute. Before we get to the fun stuff, I was going to play this video clip. Hold on. Let's just to kind of add the cherry on the cake for this presentation. Let's hear from George Bernard Shaw himself. This was posted by James Lindsay a while back. But just let's check this out. I'll make it big and then I'll reset the video. Hold on, guys. Hold on. We got this. Oh, wait a sec. I got to get to that. Yeah, here it is. I think. Where is that thing? Oh, man, this is embarrassing. It's always this stupid stuff going on. Where do I get that link? I can't unmute the video. Okay, we're going to reset. We're going to stop sharing. We're going to reshare. Oh, you know what it is? It's because I had it in my notes. And you know how like the X app opens, but then if I opened a direct link in X, it opens in the browser. It's one of those situations. Just give me a second here. Okay. George Bernard Shaw. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to retweet it, and then it'll show up on my main feed, and then I will go back and share it. Sorry to bore you with all the technical stuff, guys. Those of you who do live shows, I'm sure you know my pain, okay? Come on, show me some support with this. It's not my fault. Okay. Is this the right one? Oh, I got to refresh my X page. Come on. Wow, what a song and dance. There we go. There we go. Okay, final check. Okay, we can finally get to this video. Here it is. George Bernard Shaw. What's he saying? What's the caption here? George Bernard Shaw, a founding member of the Fabian Socialist Society, explaining how he thinks all useless people should be killed as determined by a government agency. Wow, it's pretty aggressive. Let's go for it here. What's he saying? What an asshole. What a fucking fuck you, George Bernard Shaw. What do you think? Who the hell do you think you are? But do you see the mentality? And just to, nail it home, that's what they did in numerous variations of socialist collectivist regimes. You just look how pleasant. We're a pleasant British chap. George Bernard Shaw, loved and admired by generations of scholars, saying that we've got Too many useless people running around. You must know 5 to 10 people yourself over there, Jimmy, who is perfectly useless. And what we should do is set up a board where you just bring them before the board and say, could you, sir, please justify your existence? Was this Ebenezer Scrooge? Is this like President Snow? Like, where do you think they get the information to build these characters in movies? Actually, holy shit, the Hunger Games. Holy shit. Think about the premise, think about the storyline of those films. Each district, you got this super ultra gay like center city, the city, right? The main district. Everybody's super extroverted. They all look like fashion Hollywood type people, the champagne socialists, right? That they're the good slaves. They're the bellwethers, you know? And then we got all these districts. And from the districts, we do a celebration of the day that the totalitarian system crushed all of the rebels who dared fight for their sovereignty and freedom. And now we take as tribute any of the useless eaters from those districts to battle it out for our entertainment. And as a warning to never rebel ever again. Isn't that basically the thing? Yeah, that's basically the world. So when you start hearing these assholes breaking down all their love and light, fraternity, equality, helping the little guy, all we just wanted was a couple welfare programs. You guys are overreacting. Turns out it's way more than that. This is their dream. We get to decide who the useless eaters are, who they are. And you know who they're going to be? Because you're probably, there might be a part of your brain that goes, you know, I know a lot of really useless fucking people running around, right? And you're probably part of it. Yep, there's definitely, you know, they wouldn't have survived in the real natural world. The only reason they survived is because of this cozy little, you know, your mind starts to go there and they know this. And they go, yeah, I know some useless, but who defines, first of all, it's horrible to even be talking about this, but in their little twisted world, who gets to make a decision as to who the useless ones are? You didn't justify your existence. Is this what they're going to use AI for in the future? You got to sit in front of some AI bot and justify your existence. And if it doesn't hit all the things, then it just like kills you. There's a movie out. I don't know who's in it, but it's something like that. You're accused of a crime and then you have so much time to show your innocence. But like, this is him speaking publicly. What do they discuss behind the scenes at the Hellfire Club, you know, at night? What do they discuss there? Oh, Marta was saying no sound. Are we still no sound? There's sound, right? Tell me there's sound. I think it was just that video that for a second didn't have sound because I was doing all the technical stuff. But guys, just tell me real quick that you can hear me. I guess there's a delay. Okay, we're going to keep going as if you guys can hear me. Someone's saying, oh, not for the clip. Oh, so the clip itself you guys didn't hear anything at all? Okay, well, that sucks. But you can go to my X at @truthwarriordad. Okay, you can hear me, but not the video. Okay, you can go to my X at @truthwarriordad. Unfortunately, I can't download the video and then play it right now. But just go listen to it. That's what he's saying. Do I have another one? Hold on. Let's see if I can. I don't want to do this live, though. It's going to be an issue. So I've kind of summarized what he's saying. This is what he's saying in the video, okay? If you didn't catch it already, what he's saying in the video is that you must know people who are completely useless in this world. We need to do something with the useless people. And in order to solve this problem of useless people, we need to set up a government commission that will get average people to justify their existence. And if they can't justify their existence, we will kill them. That's basically what he's saying. So yeah, if you say you'll share it, just go up on my X, you'll see it up at the top. So there you go, guys. Not a perfect stream today. We had a few technical glitches, but I try my best. I hope the information came across, though. I hope you guys get the gist of it. I hope it added some value. Maybe you heard some things you knew about. Maybe you caught a few things that are new to you. But this level of the analysis is what's going to be the death blow to this agenda. If you stay on the level of the battle that they want you to fight, we're not going to win. And that level is, let's just keep all the divisionary politics stuff going back and forth. If they've captured both sides with maybe a few outliers that are fighting back, thank goodness. But if they, by and large, they've captured both sides, you get Fabian A or Fabian B, then we got to stop fighting on that turf. And then also the huge point about not fighting these socialists and collectivists with their straw man argument. They're trying to pull you onto a battlefield that was completely designed and is fake. And if you fight them there, they'll win. But if you fight them with truth and facts and reality and you get good at that, there is no way they can win. So that's why I like doing these shows at this level, getting to the underpinning philosophies, the thinking, the people, the history. This is the journalism. This is what your media doesn't do. They just give you some slogans. They don't, your history department in school isn't doing very good these days either. And that's why they're coming after the internet. Of course, people that don't believe in free speech are going to be attacking free speech every way possible. And the reason they're terrified of free speech is the same reason that like all the people that are spreading false narratives are afraid of people who are telling the truth. Because free speech means that some average Joe can just come in get in their basement and get on the air and say, hey guys, here's the facts. Look at it. Can you see it? And they can show you the videos and they can show you, and they don't like that. They want to have manufactured reality again, back in the golden legacy days of media where there wasn't independent media. There wasn't an independent journalism. There wasn't any of this, So they're coming after the internet because they don't want truth to reach your ears and wake you up out of the slumber that they put you in. And the issue is, because we're so long ahead in this game, in this war, it's harder to be the person that knows these facts and to go out and tell the average person the truth, because the truth is pretty ugly. This is another thing. The truth is pretty ugly. There's some ugly things like this rape gang inquiry thing and all that. It's super ugly. Nobody wants to spend time in this. The Epstein files. Nobody wants to. It's ugly. It's dark. The cults, the horrible things. And then what people do is they go, well, I don't want to talk about that stuff because it hurts my feelings or it makes me feel kind of sick inside. And I don't blame you. But when you're up against the wall with this kind of an enemy, the truth is the only thing that works. It's the only thing that wins. It's the silver bullet. So we can get past that phase and just go, all right, we're in this age of revealing. The truth is coming out in so many different areas. I think it's going to continue. I think there's a new spirit moving right now. And there's also a lot of red herrings and a lot of bullshit being peddled as well. But if you can stay the course, I think that more is going to be revealed. And if you're paying attention and you know what you're looking at, it's going to be nothing but a positive in the end, because of the fact that the truth about something horrible that was covered up comes out, and there's the nastiness of that first reaction and all the things that come with it. And then over time, the healing happens, because the truth heals. The truth heals. So when these facts come out more, a healing process, it's slow. It's not as fast as everybody wants it to be, but it's just what's necessary. It's what's necessary. So that's why I love the slogan for the show, truth wins. And only your mind, when unshackled from the crowd, from the propaganda, from your fear of reality, from your self-hate, when you can detach from that and see as things as they are, at least to the best that you can see the truth, and you're motivated to see the truth, and you're motivated to live freely. You want to live this life. If you're that kind of person, then I've just given you the great minds to study who argued for you. They argued on your behalf. the champions of humanity, these are the people that saw through it, experienced it. These are the whistleblowers. And they argued for future generations. And we have to keep that tradition alive. The tradition of challenging these liars, challenging these positions, and showing you don't just take something apart and then blow it up and walk away. If there's going to be any deconstructing going on in the solutions, we have to leave something better in its place, which is not what this Fabian tactic is. They're just here to blow shit up. They're just like, we're just here to fuck shit up. Like that's their, and build a better world. But as I've shown, it's not going to be better. You're living in the world they created, these people. You're living in it. And if you don't like what you see, it's important to get to the bottom of where all the things you don't like that you see came from and who made that happen and what the things you don't like that you see are the consequences of implementing bad ideas. It's as simple as that. So let me just check, see if anybody else got any comments here. Let's go to my, Substack. What's up, Substack? Whoa, a whole bunch of stuff going on over here. Farmed Out says, I can hear you. Can you please speak a minute about how Trump fits into all this? Oh, God. You can't speak for a minute about that one, Farmed Out. It takes a lot more than a minute. All I can tell you is that his actions right now, especially with Iran, that a lot of people don't understand, are directly in conflict with the City of London agenda, which means it's directly in conflict with the Fabian Socialist. He just went in and started calling out communism on the world stage. Like, I don't know, man. He's serving a historical purpose that I think a lot of people can't see. That's all I'm going to say for now. The Lord, the Spirit works in mysterious ways. Give it time. Give it time. But regardless, become your own champion, your own hero. Study this, learn it, learn the arguments. You're going to need to know it because you're going to be challenged on this. And if you are going to fight for your freedom, you have to know the arguments of freedom and you have to know what the counter positions are. And you don't even have to just rely on your own thinking on it. The good news is you can learn from the greats who've already fought the battle. And that's what I'm here to do, is preserve the tradition, introduce you to the names and the info. You follow it up in your own time. You come to your own conclusions, because I believe in freedom. I believe in intellectual freedom. I believe it's possible. And I think that this battle, as long as it's been waging, is just getting warmed up. And we're about to hit a new leg of this in the coming months and years. And everybody's preparing food and weapons and ammo and backup supplies, but very few are preparing on an intellectual level. And that's what my show hopefully will help with, is to help you do just that. And at least win it for yourself. Freedom is an attitude. Freedom is a way of thinking. Freedom is a way of living and behaving. And it definitely comes with the weight of personal responsibility, but you'll find that that's a necessary mechanism to incentivize you to strive even higher, to forge even deeper, to grow even stronger, and to come out even better. The grinding force of nature is not here to oppress you and enslave you. It's here to motivate you. Earth is a dojo. Earth School is a dojo. It's not a garden. It's a frickin' dojo. And it's here to temper you and make you stronger and better. And these people don't like that agreement, and they're trying to forcibly change it. And they don't care how many skulls they got to step over to do it. So choose your side. Eros, Thanatos. Freedom, enslavement. Truth, fake truth that everybody believes as truth, but everybody secretly knows isn't the truth, and slowly eats away at their soul and turns humans into beasts. These are the dividing lines. Choose wisely, my friends. We'll catch you again soon. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for your support. Please share this out. Help me get the word out. If you really want to support the show on the next level, jump on to my Truth Warrior Premium over at Substack. A couple bucks a month goes a long way. And I've got a big supply of very unique presentations and information for you over there. Jump onto the Unslaved podcast. You can find it on Substack. I'm also still working in the background. It's very tedious, but it's a good work. It's going to take a bit more time, but we're going to get there. We are totally rebuilding the Unslaved website for a better member experience and an easier process for everybody. And that'll be coming soon. So go check out that. It is one of the most precious archives on the internet. I have no fear in saying that. So check that out. That if you want to be challenged on thinking, there's the place to go. And I shall be back here again real soon. So thanks, everybody. Be well. Stay free. Truth wins. Cheers, everybody.